back to the Superhero Rewind Commentary Project. It's me, Captain Logan, and joining me as always is my sidekick, Austin, the Day Ghost.
Hey, sorry, my mom's bothering me. How's it going?
Oh man, Mom, you're so professional.
I know, right?
Well, we're trying to do something really important here, okay? We have to talk about Days of Future Past for like the 500th time. It's really important.
Just messaging me to be like, do you like a certain movie? Which I won't say, so we don't have to get into it. Let's go.
Oh, I know what movie it is. I know what you're talking about. I'm seeing that tomorrow. Anyway, tonight we are going to tackle X-Men Days of Future Past, which is kind of fortuitous because it's a real big kind of X-Men moment right now with X-Men 97 having just come out this last week, dating this commentary, but that's the moment in time we're in, and I've been on kind of a big X-Men kick lately. We didn't choose this because of that. Somebody else did. We put out a Patreon. Usually we do polls for the show, and we decided to do it differently this last time, so we took lots of suggestions, put them on a wheel, spun the wheel, and Days of Future Past is the movie that just happened to come up. We did not rig this, but kind of neat that it worked out the way that it did. Like I said, I've done lots and lots of content on this before, so I'll try to be as unrepetitious as possible, but it will be, impossible not to bring up some things I've talked about before with this. I've got a long scripted rewind on this from a lot of years ago, I think maybe 16. I put that out.
Oh, wow. Oh, yeah, because it would have been with Apocalypse, sure.
Yeah, when Apocalypse came out, and of course, I loved this movie in the theater. It was really exciting to finally be able to talk about it. So, back in that day, a movie that I really wanted to talk about when it was finally 2 years old, to be like, yes, finally I can talk about this. Now, it's like 5 or 6 years later, geez, I really wanted to do that, and I completely forgot about it, and it's already somehow this many years later. So,
yeah, it's the 10-year anniversary of this movie.
Isn't that wild?
It's crazy.
We've been saying that for everything we've been talking about lately, but it is pretty nuts that we're 10 years past that. It's also the 10th anniversary for Guardians, but you know what the more surprising one is for me? Amazing Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
That's the one of these that most doesn't feel like 10 years ago to me.
Sure. Well, it also does in the same way because we've had a trilogy since then. And not just a trilogy, but... 5, 6 Spider-Man appearances in a new continuity.
Yeah, so many, and then the Spider-Verse animated movies too.
Yeah, that almost is a trilogy now.
There's so much of it. So yeah, like I guess in that way, you look at all the all the continuity, you look at all the history we've had of it now, and it feels like a long time ago. But that's the one of those three that I remember kind of it feeling not too long ago that I was sitting in the theater a little bit perplexed by what I was looking at and wondering what was coming next. I think some of it is just because it's unfinished.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure.
Even though he's come back now. Like, it's even been enough time that we've done sort of kind of this thing with Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. Kind of. The crossover of casts.
Yep. And we've also done 4 spin-offs. 4 or 5? I think 4.
Oh, you mean for the Sonyverse?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's wild. Well, anyway, talking about X-Men, these big crossover things, and I consider this that to a degree, even though it's not technically different continuities or different franchises, it certainly felt like a big crossover event. You didn't really expect, especially this early, and we'll get into that whole thing, that it was a little early to do Days of Future Past, to do, an X-Men reunion film right after you just did the big prequel thing with First Class, but it was a big event, and it kind of caught everybody off guard and surprised us all that you would bring back Stewart and McKellen and all of these guys. Now we've had No Way Home, and we've had Flash, and we've had DC Crisis even before those, and so this is very in vogue to do now, and is not really the novelty it was at the time, like as big of a novelty, just because there's a lot of precedent now. We keep doing it, and we're doing this again this year with Deadpool 3, which is the other thing that makes this very relevant to this year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And it will also be, it looks like, all about Fox X-Men, just like this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, one, it's funny because like it feels so long ago, but also I remember it so well. Like I remember all the build up to it. Like when they released the like 13 or like 30 or whatever magazine covers with like
Remember
each
that?
character. Yeah,
I did a video
you
on
did a
that.
video on it. Yeah. No, that was how I found out about it, was through that
Oh,
video.
cool.
And I remember like I still remember even some of the poses on some of them. Yeah.
It's been so long since this happened. You were just a lowly subscriber I didn't know, and you and I are now in our 4th year working together.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
how long it's been.
I think that was our first look at the Sentinels. Both versions was those covers.
Yeah, we'll have to talk about that. I'm not the biggest fan of either of those designs, really.
Yeah, no, I'm not either, but we'll get into it.
So yeah, Days of Future Past has always been one of my favorite X-Men movies. I had an interesting viewing of it this week. I hadn't watched it in a long time, and honestly, Austin, not to get too ahead of myself, I might be more negative in this commentary than I ever have been. Not to say that like I don't like this movie now, but just getting some time away from it. And again, it's been a long time since I've really looked at this and thought a lot about it. Some of the seams are showing in a way they didn't as much for me before, and I don't think it's so much like conversations with people that don't like it as much as me, because like I. I know you don't hate this movie, but you've never been, on the high of it that I have. But
No,
there's
it's
just
funny.
some
Someone
things.
in the comments summarized my view on this movie
Yeah, sure.
perfectly, which is that I never have the same reaction to this twice. It's always like I'll watch it and I'll be like, that was great. Like I really enjoyed that. And then I'll watch it again and be like, like it wasn't that great. I will say this is not the most negative viewing I've had. The most was probably the time I watched this beforehand. But I've got thoughts.
Yeah, sure. It'll be fun to talk about, nevertheless. The Professor X arc always really resonated with me, and especially just right in that moment, I was in a place in my life where I had like a deep personal connection to that, and this will always have a soft, like I'll always have a soft spot. This will have kind of an important place for me, just personally because of that. I was in a real burnout place with the channel and writing rewinds and stuff right then, and I felt a little bit like Professor X did in that moment. This is something I haven't talked about a lot publicly, and I don't want to get super personal. But I had this thing right then as I went and saw that movie, where I wondered if I was good at the job anymore, and if the stuff I was making was as good as the stuff I used to make, and all of that. I was kind of in that same headspace. And also just lots of nostalgia for X2.
Sure.
Which,
Well, that's your favorite X-Men movie, so
yeah, which like I unabashedly couldn't help that really spoke to me, getting to hear that theme again and all of that. And then now retroactively, again with time away from it, this kind of firmly goes in that list that we made last year, I think, and I don't know if we talked about this in that video we made, of good things that ruined everything. Because like, past this movie, I wish I could just enjoy this in a vacuum and not think about what came after it. Bringing Singer back was kind of the worst thing that happened to us.
100%. I find it really easy to cut off the last two sequels when watching this. Part of it's because this very much is an ending. Like, this, in a lot of ways, is just kind of the last X-Men movie. So, like, for me, it's easy to ignore that we did things after it.
Yeah, and I think I was maybe, way too naive in the theater, because I want to be able to experience it that way and not think about anything that comes after it. But one of the reasons I was on such a high after it was because I was excited about the future.
Well, absolutely. No,
And it's hard to get away from that.
No, and I didn't see Apocalypse in the theater because I saw the trailers and I went, "Oh, they squandered all of that potential. Like, this looks terrible."
Well, anyway, we'll go ahead and get into the movie here. I have the steelbook for this movie. I will say, and it's a pretty steelbook. It's a cool release. The only problem with it is, and I wish I had looked at the list of features before I did this, but whenever I or very often anyway, when I replace a release with a nicer one, I'll go ahead and sell the old one just to make space back here because I've got such a big collection
Mhm.
of superhero movies. And I sold my double disc that I got when this first came out, and it has the Bryan Singer commentary and Kinberg commentary, and this does not.
Oh
I don't
no.
know why. Wouldn't you put the same disc in it? Why is the disc different?
Yeah, that's weird. Is that commentary maybe on YouTube? I know a lot of directors'
I
commentaries
looked
end up on
and it's
YouTube.
not.
It's
What's
not.
weird is, you know what's weird? So I listened to part of it today.
Hmm.
Let me just say, I also have the road cut, of course, and we'll be watching the theatrical version tonight. We'll talk, of course, a little bit about some of the differences. Maybe down the road we'll do a full commentary on the road cut. I don't have one on the channel. And this will be at least our second, if not third, commentary on this movie.
Yeah, and I've never seen the road cut.
Oh, have you not?
I've not. No, I know what's in it. Like I know a lot of the big changes.
Okay.
But I've never actually sat through
It
it.
is a different experience. Now I kind of wish we were doing this, but just so that you could have seen it, and I could get your first impression on it. But that's not what the guy asked for. That put it on the wheels. So we're watching this. But Singer has a commentary with John Ottman. Also, on the road cut, so he did two different commentaries for these. And what's weird is this release includes, of course, that commentary, but it also has the theatrical version. So if you don't care about special features, you could just buy this and have both cuts, which was really, really nice of Fox to do. But they also didn't include the other commentary on this, and I don't know why they did that either. Just put them both on there. What is the point of that? You can't say it was so that you'd buy the other version because they included the theatrical cut.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I'm the only person that would care. All right, we'll get it to timestamp 0 if you want to watch with us. We always recommend that you do that. This movie, despite how packed it is with characters and ideas and subplots, is only 2 hours and 11 minutes long. I always remember this as being a little bit longer than that. The road cut is 2.5, which, again, putting cards on the table too early, I'll just say is closer to what the runtime should have been. 2 hours and 10 minutes is far too short. There's a little bit too much cut out of it. It's a little rushed in places. And in some ways, the road cut is the better cut. This is sort of like Deadpool 2, where the definitive cut does not exist for this, in my opinion, anyway. But yeah, I think it's way too short.
Okay, interesting. I've never really had that issue with it, but you'll have to point out to me those places, and I'll see if I agree.
Oh, sure, absolutely. Okay, here we go. Everybody get ready to press play. I'm just about to say now, and sorry about the long preamble. But it's us, and it's Days of Future Past. I can't help myself. Oh, I also want to mention that for anybody that didn't see the Captain Logan show a couple weeks ago, it's episode 299 if you want to hear my epic story about my run-in at Planet Comic-Con with Chris Claremont. But I got X-Men number 141 signed by Chris Claremont just 2
I was
weekends
going to say, I'm going to be disappointed if you didn't bring that up.
ago. Part of the reason I picked this cover was because Austin had the idea that if you get that signed, you can show it off on the Days of Future Past commentary, which we just happened to be doing.
We were doing it, yeah.
Isn't that exciting? So, that was super cool, and I have a fascinating story about talking to him about Star Trek that you can go check out on that other video. But anyway, it's always been exciting to have this in my collection anyway. This is, of course, the first printing of X-Men 141, and in really good shape, too. I haven't had this graded. Mm-hmm. This is not a CGC copy. I just have it in this case so that I don't get it messed up. But, and there's Austin's plaid pajamas.
I'm still here. I'm getting over a cold. I made the mistake of not bringing the tissues with me.
Oh yeah, that's a rookie mistake when you got a cold. I've got mine right here. I got the same thing going on. Anyway, thanks for watching live if you're doing that, and as always, if you want to make sure that we talk about any particular aspect of this that we haven't gotten to, or if you just have opinions you'd like heard, you can leave a super chat in any dollar amount, and we'll also try to chat with the regular chat some as we go through, so no pressure on that, and away we go. Here we go. Everybody please press play. Are you ready, Austin?
Yep.
All right, cool. Everybody please press play right. Oh, hold on. Sorry. I gotta get my sound flipped over. I remembered it this time.
I spilled water down my leg when I got up to do that. That's annoying.
Well done. Everybody, please press play right now.
Hold on.
Oh, do we have to start over?
Yeah, my movie didn't start.
Oh, geez. Weird.
That was really weird. I've never had that happen before.
We're just having all kinds of problems here.
I hit play, and it was like play, and then it just didn't go. And then I hit play again, and it did. I don't know why it did that. Sorry.
We're going to do everything we can to keep you guys here till 1 in the morning. That's the
exactly.
That's the plan. Just remember, folks, it's not a video, it's a stream.
Yeah, there's no cutting this out.
Okay, are you ready?
Yep.
And third time's the charm. Everybody, please press play right now.
There. Thank you, Disney Plus. This video is brought to you by Disney Plus, which sometimes will not play.
It is, for some reason, not on Plus here right now. It's on Max.
That's so weird.
They keep moving them around.
Like, every X-Men movie dropped it once, and you guys, it seemed like they kind of drip-fed it. There must be some sort of like streaming thing.
So
like
I have to mention it every time because it's so cool, but I still get jazzed at the Fox logo every time.
Oh, it's great. Yeah.
It's so cool.
And they hold on the X. This is the first one that does that, right? The holding on the X. That's what I thought.
Yep, and then it kind of, depending on how you want to look at it, it kind of establishes the X2 theme as the Fox X-Men theme now, because Apocalypse uses it too, even though it's more like a first-class sequel in its way, right? Because it's continuing with the new cast and isn't, doing the big crossover thing anymore, but it's still Singer and Ottman working together, so they want to keep that theme, and it's still got, tonally some things to do with those older movies. And then when you get to Dark Phoenix, we've now lost Ottman, and so you don't have that theme anymore.
Well, it's funny too because there's some things that First Class does that's going back to the first movie, so it's kind of interesting then that you have this one kind of going back to the second one.
That's true too.
Like one of the big ones obviously is Cerebro. They go back to the X1 Cerebro look, even though obviously like I think we all agree 2 is a better Cerebro design. Or not design, you know what I mean, like how we visualize that.
So I did watch First Class again also in preparation for this, and it's going to be difficult not to just talk about that movie the whole time, because I had some new thoughts, and I was kind of wishing that we were just doing that right after I watched that.
Yeah, that's my favorite X-Men movie. It's great.
But I will talk a little bit later about Shaw in comparison to Trask, because I've got kind of an interesting comparison thing to do with that.
Interesting. My main thing with Trask in this movie is I need a lot more of him. I don't know that we get enough with him for me to have any read on his character.
There is one scene that's crucial that gives me just enough to write a paper about it, conceptually, which I did with the rewind. But and also I like how subtle some of it is.
Sure.
In casting and in look and in his attitude and stuff. There's a lot I can read into that, but you're absolutely right. It would be nice to have some more background on him, and that's one of the many things that makes me feel like this movie needs another 20-30 minutes.
Yeah, no, and I think Dinklage is great. Like, it's great casting. I think he brings a lot to the role. I just don't know that we have really enough with him on paper for me to be like, he's a great villain. But you're right. It does have that one scene that is good. I just need more.
This movie in a vacuum, if you didn't have, and obviously this doesn't make sense because this is such a companion piece to X2, and it's nice that it's not just that movie again, because it could have easily fallen into that trap. And there's some places where we're repeating ourselves on purpose and doing, whole scenes that are callbacks. And some people will think that it's too derivative or it's too self-indulgent on Singer's part. And some people will think that that's cool and, creative. And I lean more in that direction. But I forget where I was going at that point.
Okay, I also forgot where you were going.
No, that's all right.
um, I like a lot of this future stuff. Some of this is some of the comic booky action that I think a lot of us wanted in those first few movies that we never really got, especially with Blink. I really like how they do her powers.
Oh, sorry, I remember where I was going with
go
that.
for it.
So the thing is, Trask is interesting in comparison to other villains we've had before, particularly
Sure.
with Stryker. And this is a companion piece to X2. I've got some kind of on paper reads with him, especially thematically, that I wouldn't have if this movie just existed on its own.
Mm-hmm. No, and I think the Stryker thing is what makes me like kind of frustrated with the Trask stuff, because I feel like he needs to be bumped up to be on the same level as Stryker in terms of presence on screen,
or even Shaw.
Or even Shaw, yeah.
Because Shaw doesn't get a lot of background either, but he's got a lot more presence. Mm-hmm. And I think I can give you a read on both of their ideologies, mm-hmm. but I don't even want to say Shaw is more drawn, but he's just more there.
Yeah. I think what this movie's trying to do is, the thing we kind of always talk about with certain movies, it's the Sauron thing, right? Like, he's not on screen a lot, but like he has a presence over the story. But I just don't feel like I have that enough with Trask.
Yeah, and there's excuses for it, right? Like, it's tricky when you have this many characters. It's tricky when Magneto is in his way your villain yet again. It's tricky when Trask is not only a bad guy, but also the MacGuffin of the story.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, it's weird
because he's got an ideology and like a villainous ideology to compare with Xavier, Magneto, and Trask and Shawn, all of those guys. But he's also the person we have to save to make the bad future not happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, exactly. Well, it's funny because you talk about all the character balance thing. When you get down to it, there's really only like what 5 major characters in this movie. Like, obviously you have a lot in the future, but they don't really get anything to do.
That's true, but because you only have 2 hours and 10 minutes, all of the other characters that are taking up any screen time at all are taking away from those subplots and character arcs.
That's true. And I know a lot of people have it with Apocalypse, but this is my first, Jennifer Lawrence is getting in the way of this franchise.
And I will say, I'll just politely disagree with you, at least from when I initially saw this. I did not feel that way initially, and I always thought that her arc was pretty decent. I've got reservations about the ending, but it is hurt for me by sequels.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's more interesting because of where it might go.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is what I'm saying. Is she like, I like the are you Charles's Raven or are you Mystique question, and like does she have the capacity to put her thirst for revenge aside and be an X-Man?
Well, and that is a way in which,
and then once she is an X-Man, I hate her.
Yes.
So that's really unfortunate. But I'm sorry, what were you saying?
No, that is a way in which they are building on First Class. What they did with her, but I don't know. I've just always felt like her role is beefed up way too much because it's Jennifer Lawrence, even by this movie, and I don't think she's very good in it.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, I don't have that. I think she's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But I think she's awful later.
Yes, no, she's definitely worse in the next two. But I also think part of it is the thing with her being the manifestation of how we get these evolved Sentinels is so contrived.
And the setup for the whole movie is too contrived, and individually none of the pieces really work, and it's just a conceit that you kind of have to give it in order to run with the rest of a pretty cool story, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
I don't like Kitty Pryde's role in it. it's just random and makes no sense, and it's just her because because we're trying to nod to the comics. It's one of those almost like Star Trek 09 things where we make mistakes because we're trying to make the fans happy, when you'd be better off just not even trying that hard to be connected to the comic story, I think. Like, if you want Kitty Pryde to be involved, have her... I don't even know what you do. I was going to say have her related somehow to somebody that makes a time machine or something. Don't give her a secondary power
or just have her be the leader of these people still.
That would be fine. Yeah, do
and
that.
They get the time machine.
In the Days of in Claremont's comics, it's Is it Rachel Summers?
I'm not sure because I'm very blind on X-Men comics.
It's character named Rachel. I can't remember if it's Rachel Summers. I think it is. I
just know that it's Bishop in the cartoon because my uncle complains that Bishop isn't the one that's sent back like every time this movie comes up, and I'm like, that's not what the comics did, right?
And that's also throwing a bone to the fans having Bishop here at all.
Yes,
because he's in other continuity has been connected to Days of Future, and he's a futuristic character.
Well, it makes sense. Like, you're going, okay, we want to have like this little team in the future. They're just window dressing basically. You can throw in like little fan favorites like that. Like, that's obviously how you get Colossus and Storm in here. That's fine. And Iceman.
Played Out just said, so Cap just destroyed this movie. Okay, that's fine. I talked about this in the rewind. None of this is really new news from me, but observations from me, but all of this exposition is clunky, and
very clunky.
Some of it's kind of weak, and this is one of the main areas where the road cut is quite a bit better,
cool.
For a couple of reasons. So there are characters that actually ask logical questions in this scene. And they are characters that get no dialogue at all in this cut. So both Blink and Bishop are saying things like, well, now wait a minute, if we go back and change time, then we might not even be in this future. You're going to be wiping out our history. Somebody in a time, and I'm a stickler for this, but somebody in a time travel story must always come out and make that point. I have to have that. It's just important, because you'd go, well, even though you're trying to fix a dystopia, and yes, we've lost all these people, and isn't that horrible, we need to at least address the few people left whose lives we are changing. We have to address that, even with a big dystopia. It's a much bigger important thing when you're changing time just to save a few people or to help yourself, right? Like, then it's an even bigger issue. But you have to address butterfly effect. You have to address the children that won't be born because you do this. Like, that stuff has to come up. And it did, but they cut it.
Or just the idea that you could make things way worse.
Yeah, and that you could make it worse. And just that this is an insane idea, and why would we expect it to work? And this is not addressed in the road cut, but one of the things that always really bugged me about the exposition here too is just all the assumptions that we're making about how Kitty Pryde's weird secondary power works, which, by the way, I don't even know how you would figure out you had that power, but whatever.
Yeah, I don't know.
Like, how that works in relationship to Wolverine. All this talk about, well, what if you had a mind that could heal itself like faster than, and like the mind, if you stretch it too far, it breaks. Like, what are we actually talking about? Are we talking about a physical thing, or are we talking about sanity? Like, how do you know Wolverine will be okay with this?
I've always assumed it was sanity, but Wolverine's an idiot, so like that's like canonical. Wolverine's stupid.
But here's why that doesn't matter, because everybody in the scene accepts it.
No, I agree.
And it is,
that's where it's an issue.
And I get your joke, but I have to say this: it's not just Wolverine saying a dumb thing. It is the movie giving you information. It just is, and it's dumb.
No, I know. I'm saying Wolverine says a dumb thing, and then the movie runs with it. That's...
But I have to say that for people that would make your argument legitimately, because I have heard of that, and it just doesn't fly.
No, I agree.
I now
You need another beat where Magneto's like, that's not what she's talking about. Like, you realize that, right?
here's what you actually need. And again, this is where the movie needs to be longer and where you need to give the audience more credit. I blame the studio as much or more than I blame Singer and the producers for this, Kinberg and everybody, because listening to his commentaries, you get the sense that they were a little bit micromanaging on this movie, and that there was a decent amount of kind of meddling where they would look at takes, look at scenes, and go, oh no, people are going to get bored. You got to cut things. You got to move faster. Like, you can kind of tell there was some pressure from the studio with that.
Interesting. What I've always wondered, and I don't know if it's available, but what Vaughn's script looks like, because I think he ultimately just gets the story by credit, doesn't he?
I'm sorry, who?
Matthew Vaughn.
Vaughn only gets a story credit, and he's one of 3 people who do. And from what I can tell, I thought he initially wrote this movie, but he didn't.
Okay, so he just writes an outline, I guess, then.
Honestly, I think he just had a few ideas for it, and they used enough that they gave him a story credit. Because I know what made him walk is he talks about this as late as 2019. We didn't even know this for the longest time. He walks because he reads a script and says, okay, never mind, I don't think we should do this early. I think we need another movie in between with the first class cast, and then do a third movie where we bring it all together as a big event. And the studio said, no, this will be a really big deal and we can make a lot of money now. And they're thinking about, current returns and not, a larger investment, as, Hollywood bigwigs are tend to do, or liable to do.
See, I didn't think he walked. I thought it was just that he had the assumption that he was making the sequel, and then the studio went, Singer decided he wanted to come back. It was how I thought it happened.
That's not what I read.
Okay.
Now, Singer sugarcoats it a little bit in the commentaries, but there's an excerpt on Wikipedia of, like, directly quoting Vaughn, where he sounds very annoyed at the studio for forcing them to do Days of Future Past second.
Yeah, no, I think he was very mad with the studio after this point. And it's unfortunate, because I wish we got his trilogy.
But let me go back for a second and say it's going to be hard not to spend the whole first half an hour just talking about this scene, but just all this exposition. But and now he's already going back. And then there's so many questions about the future, like, how is Professor X even back in his body? When did Wolverine get his metal claws back? Does Wolverine, like, remember his entire history now, because he goes back before the Weapon X program, but he remembers women he slept with here, and that's weird. But then in the future, he says, I don't know where I am in 1973, but then when he's here, it seems to all come back to him. I don't understand any of that.
But Cap, don't question it. It's a reference to Terminator. Look, he went back and he's naked now.
Oh, okay. I missed that. That went right over my head, Austin. I never thought about that. So, you're not gonna catch it because there's no lightning. There's not like a ball, like an orb of energy.
No, they got to stop the Killer Machine timeline. He traveled back in time, and he had to go through naked.
I will say, they talked about doing some sort of like time tunnel or an energy vortex or something. I like how subtle it is. I like that they didn't go there.
Well, especially if they're going to do this mind thing.
This what?
Like this Mayan time travel thing.
Oh yeah.
It would have been weird if we did some sort of like vortex or something.
Yeah, he goes through like a mind Stargate.
Yeah, exactly.
Like that's kind of weird. But anyway, so let me finally make this point that I keep talking over myself on.
Yeah.
So I think, Austin, the way you handle the questions about, can Wolverine even make this trip? Why do we expect that he can do it more than anybody else? Is we have an attempt or two that fail first. That's what it should have been. Kitty Pryde has only been sending Bishop back like
A
a
week.
few hours or a day or a week. She's never tried to go back this far. She wouldn't know who to send. Wouldn't it make more sense if we had like a trial or two? Even if they just talked about having tried it and it failed, you don't have to show it, but just like get us there. Just get us to that information. They know it because they've tried it and it didn't work, and now we're gonna try Wolverine because like maybe that will make sense. But just all the assumptions they make are kind of irksome to me.
Or maybe you could do something like they have gone back further, but they don't have anyone old enough that was around at this time that really could have made an actual difference. Like maybe they
Yeah,
sent Iceman back to like X3 or something and it didn't work. I don't know. Like I'm just spitballing.
no, that's true. I mean, they do have several people they could send if it's just about getting somebody in old enough bodies. You can send Magneto. You can
Yeah, if you're
send
going with this mind idea, yeah.
you can send Wolverine. You can send Professor X. But the idea is supposed to be their minds can't handle it, but Wolverine has healing factor. I just need more discussion about that. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. It's also very silly to me, all of the stuff. I'm going to be, like I said earlier, more negative than I've ever been in this commentary, just because this is the stuff I'm finding interesting to talk about right now. It's
Yeah.
still a fun movie. I still love a lot of the period stuff. Don't get me wrong. I'm going to sound like I hate this movie. I don't. I still had a blast watching it again. But the stuff I want to talk about is more of what's not working.
I mean, I think it's a movie that I can watch and it's like there's little great moments that make the movie good, and then there's also a death by 1,000 cuts simultaneously. Because there's a lot of really great scenes, and then there's a lot of scenes that don't make any sense and like bring down the whole. And it's depends on which viewing what you're more focused on.
There is not enough of a ticking time bomb for me to understand, and there was supposed to be more of one in a couple of different ways that's kind of addressed in the Rogue cut. And of course, there's always, oh, the Sentinels are coming, they might find us, but are we in such a hurry that Xavier and Magneto specifically couldn't give Wolverine a little bit more information about what's going on in 1973. It feels like there's certain things that they intentionally leave out so that it's more impactful for the viewer. There's places where it's just like, why wouldn't you tell Wolverine about that?
Absolutely.
And also, I don't get why he's surprised by his bone claws, because he should know that in 1973 he didn't have adamantium. If he... Well, he should know that even if he does have his memories back.
I think it's just supposed to be like it's not something he's consciously thinking about, maybe.
I guess that's, yeah, and that's okay, except don't in the same scene have him go, I slept with her many times. He shouldn't know that.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Robert, while I still love this movie, I do too, but I got issues. I got complaints. And a lot of the stuff I've always had, but some of it felt more heightened this time.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely.
One of the things that I always, even in the theater, raised a huge eyebrow at, that is just funny and I love to complain about, is there's a mutant in this scene who has these powers where he's got these tattoos that show up on his hands.
Puke powers, yeah.
And yeah, and they make like the poison symbol, or the what is it? Like the toxic symbol?
Yes.
And I'm like, that's a man-made symbol. And your mutant power creates it on your hand? Like, so nature has decided that's the symbol for poison?
Yeah, nature knows.
Okay.
They should have sent that guy back in time. He was in the future.
He was.
Yeah.
That's a really cool bookend, by the way. We keep it, and we sprinkle him through. Every now and again, you see that guy at different ages.
Yes. No, I like that as well.
It's a neat detail.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what happened to Toad between 1973 and the first X-Men movie. He's a completely different looking character.
Yeah, well, I think Cap, they just don't care.
It's weird, though, the way they cherry pick the things they want to be really continuous about, and the things that
It is, yeah.
that we kind of pave over and soft reboot, right? Like, it's smarter than a lot of those kinds of things in some places. But then with other things, they just go, and we don't care, we're going to do our own version of it. And then that gets even more egregious by Apocalypse, of course.
Absolutely. Also, because we're here, prequel Stryker sucks. He has no presence, and why is he not Southern anymore? Which would be fine, but they keep trying to make him a thing as well. Like, in both this and Apocalypse.
Yeah,
they really want you to remember Stryker.
I don't like it. He needs to have at least something of the same personality that Brian Cox had. I mean, like, maybe that guy gets a little bit more verbose and over the top in his older age, but, like, why does, like you said, why doesn't he have his accent? He just doesn't seem like the same character at all. And it seems to me, again, I think this might, I'm reading between the lines with some of what Singer's saying in commentaries, because I think perhaps this was a more 11th hour choice than they let on.
Oh, okay.
Because he says originally that character was just supposed to be kind of a random, unnamed, like, secondhand guy for Trask. And at some point they decided it was Stryker. I wonder just how late in the game that was.
Yeah, I wonder. Like, maybe, do you think they might have cast him even before they figured that out?
I'm wondering about that. I think it's possible they even made that choice on set. I'll go that far, actually, because this movie, like X2, and I guess this is just how Singer liked to work, but I have to say past tense now with Singer, but this movie holds together well enough that you would think that a lot more scenes were figured out and not written on the fly than they are, and X2 has that as well. There's a lot of cobbling things together, a lot of reshoots, a lot of going back a year later and going, here's a scene we should have shot, let's throw that in there. A lot of that kind of stuff. So it is entirely plausible that Stryker becomes that character on set. I don't know that for sure.
Interesting. Yeah, well, especially because you have like a younger Professor X and Magneto that are, as good as the older ones. It's a shame that, like, I can't buy this guy being the third person in that kind of trinity that you get in X2.
No, it's so sad because I also want Stryker here because he's so interesting, or because Trask is so interesting in comparison to him.
Yeah.
Can I do that breakdown real quick, just while I'm thinking about it?
Go for it.
This will be relatively quick, but in my mind, and I don't know if I wrote exactly this in my rewind years ago. I have maybe a slightly different read on it than I did then. Because I talked about how you've got that, like you said, Trinity that I talked about in the old X2 rewind with Xavier and Magneto and Stryker, and how Stryker and Magneto are on opposite ends of an ideology and a mission, and Xavier is in the middle in trying to create peace between mutants and humans, and can we coexist? I think Stryker is like an anti-Magneto, and Trask in his way is an anti-Xavier. And the reason I'm saying that is because Stryker wants the same thing Magneto wants, sort of, but for humans. So he actually sees humans as superior to mutants. He thinks mutants are animals. He calls Wolverine that over and over again. He thinks they're monsters because of the past because of what happened with his son. And with Trask, he's like this twisted Xavier where he wants to use mutants as a way to bring the rest of the world together. So he wants all of the human, quote-unquote, races to be able to coexist by using mutants as a scapegoat that we can, put under our thumb under the name of survival. And now he brings all of humanity together. But what's interesting is he also agrees with Magneto that mutants are the superior race,
Mhm.
but he is using them and distances himself like humanity from them, talks to other humans like they're lesser, calls them it,
Mhm.
right? He doesn't actually think that. He says he admires them. I think that scene is so important because I believe him.
Mhm.
He knows that they're, and Shaw talks about this in First Class, he knows that they're the actual next step in human evolution, but if only humanity can band together and stop nature and stop them, he can live out Xavier's dream, but for only humans.
Mhm.
And that's where Trask is a really cool character on paper.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really like that line, that you just mentioned, where he says that he actually admires them, but it's one part. Like, I need more of that.
But if you cut that scene, you got nothing.
Yeah, you get nothing, exactly. You would think he was just kind of one note human bad guy that hates mutants.
But I'll also say, yeah, but once you do have that line, because I don't think it's throwaway. I think it's the movie, and again, it's just not long enough. It just doesn't give him enough screen time.
Mhm.
I think the movie is trying to be really economical, and I think, well, I know this for a fact because Singer talks about it. There's all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff that probably should be here that's cut because they go, well, there's one mention of it in this one scene, so it's there, it's present, and that's just not how it works. You get too close to the material, and this happens in a lot of big movies, of course, and just in movies in general, right? You're working on this thing for 3 years. You're living with it every day. You're seeing dailies. It takes a million years to get one scene made. So it's hard to get that distance and imagine what the viewer's actual experience is going to be.
Yeah, just art in general. Like, you live with it. You know all the details. That doesn't necessarily mean that you put them out there in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's difficult. But it's even worse with a movie like this because you also have a studio constantly snapping at you going, is it moving enough for the dumb popcorn eating audience?
Mhm. Yeah, for sure.
Somebody in the comments earlier said it probably would have been a good idea to have a movie in between, like we were talking about earlier, and I'll go even farther than that at this point. The more I thought about it, the more I actually kind of wish there was a First Class trilogy before you even got to Days of Future Past.
Yeah, Cap and I were talking about this the other day, that I think the preferable thing is that this is X-Men 4 in two ways, is what it should have been.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that.
And because you could tell some stories and really flesh out the younger X-Men team that you know already from the earlier movies in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And then a character can go back and, Wolverine or whoever it is, and meet all these characters that he knows already, but younger. Which, and of course, he's getting to do some of that here, but I think it would have been kind of more, maybe ultimately more fun if it was, full on an older cast and then a younger cast with more of the same characters.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I kind of wish we already had, I mean, I don't know if you agree with this, and I didn't used to feel this way as much, but especially just in retrospect after Apocalypse and stuff, I really liked that Storm. Why couldn't we have had Halle Berry and that Storm in the same movie?
Sure, yeah. No, I don't disagree. Well, I mean, I always thought it was weird that we didn't kind of get more X-Men in this one in the past, and that it is just Professor X, Beast, and Wolverine, and that is something that works in terms of being economical, but like just as a continuation of First Class, especially the fact that we kill off like every character in that movie off screen, like, yeah, I'm disappointed by a lot of those choices. That's not what I wanted.
Yeah, and it was
After
easy
that.
for me to again appreciate this movie. I keep saying in a vacuum, just all on its own as a piece, because it was doing so many things that I was excited to see and never thought I would get to. But you get past the initial, excitement of that, novelty of that, and you go, this looks like a movie made like 10 years after the last one, and there's 3 years in between.
Mm-hmm. That is true.
Now, there's also, to be fair, 10 years in between in story,
Mm-hmm.
but it is really weird. So I had never, I have to confess, until this week, watched First Class and Days of Future Past right next to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And it does lessen the impact of this movie a little bit for me. Like, if you like First Class, and I do, you go into this movie and it's like, it's clear that the end of First Class is setting up a story that we just never get to see. It would have been nice if we had the Magneto and Emma Frost movie. Mm-hmm. And wouldn't you care more about her dying if you had seen that? Because I don't even like her in that movie. And then, oh, Emma died. Okay. I mean...
Well, and as... Travis Warren put in a super chat. I'm going to mention this because it's going into my point. He says, $2 super chat, this is one of the most comic booky movies. Agree?
Especially at the time.
One of my things is that Vaughn brought these movies into a more comic booky place, and he goes, okay, now we're going to make the next movie, and we're going to further that. You know, we have Magneto in his big purple and red costume, and this movie walks all of it back to the
because
point
it's
where
Singer.
I don't get like any of that stuff. I don't even get black leather costumes in this movie. And then the Sentinels, like they both versions look terrible.
Yeah, it's comic booky in ideas and premise.
Yeah.
And stuff. And so I will admit, I'm with Travis in that, and thanks for the super chat. I'm with Travis in that in the theater, it did feel a lot more comic booky than a lot of these things had been at that point. You've also got it
more than these movies
in the same year as Guardians and some things, right? Like, we're starting to get a lot more comic booky. So it's not going to be very long before this does not feel like one of the most comic booky movies.
But see, I think for me, it's like the original trilogy for X-Men isn't very comic booky, and then First Class brings it more to that line as that's starting to become more of a thing, and then this walks it back to what the first three were. And like I think we remove a lot of that stuff, and you know, there's some of it in terms of what we're doing, like time travel and whatnot. But I don't know.
Something else I want to say about Trask is that like when you say we get that one line I mentioned, like I admire mutants. We need to use them as a way to bring everyone together to have a common, threat. Added to that, stuff like he's a little person. He's very short. What does that mean? That's one of those things that you could have gone into and had him have a speech about that I'm actually glad we didn't. I love this Norman Rockwell poster, where he gets into his field to make robotic
prosthetics.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the word.
Yeah.
Prosthetics, and that's really interesting. Like right after Vietnam, he seems like a really, to the rest of the world, I'm sure, like altruistic inventor that's helping people. Like he clearly like feels small and needs to be important in some way, and I like that none of that is spelled out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. I do wish we did more with Vietnam in this movie, but
sure, absolutely. But I just mean his diminutive size is endlessly fascinating to me, and I like that there's no discussion about it.
Mm-hmm. No, that's fair. I agree with that.
I'm with you about Vietnam. It's of course a really, it's the right time to set this.
Yes. Well, and I think we kind of argued about this in the history video, in that I think this one brings down the like history stuff from First Class, and then obviously like basically completely lose it in the next two. Rewatching it this time, I was like, okay, I was maybe being a little unfair when we did that, but I still do think that it's going down a notch from First Class in terms of using the time we're set in.
Yeah, I do like what Vietnam is doing thematically.
Yes, I agree with that.
I like how vulnerable the Nixon and the government are right after this to Trask's ideas.
One of the main big things that I like in terms of this is the route we're going. I like that Xavier made the X-Men and then they basically all got drafted into Vietnam like right away.
Yeah, but in not having another movie in between, what I don't like is you had one semester of the school where he got to be a professor. We don't get to see that happen.
No,
And
I
then
agree with that.
and then he's depressed, has lost his mojo, doesn't know what to do with himself anymore. But I'm glad you said that because that's the big thing I love about Vietnam is what it does for his character arc.
Yes.
His students get drafted, but more than that, for a cause that Xavier and almost literally no one on the planet believes in. And Vietnam represents, I think, the death of Xavier's dream before he even really gets started. That if we're gonna go to war with another country like this over like almost nothing, and take advantage of a situation like that, with human beings to human beings that look different and have different cultures that we don't understand, but beyond that are the same, how on earth do humans and mutants have a chance at coexisting? That's great.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's also a thing that we don't spell out and we don't talk about too much. I don't think we have to. I think that's clear.
One, it's interesting because your last movie had a Nazi as the main villain.
Yeah.
That's
what I was going to say about Shaw in comparing him to all the other villains I was talking about. And then Shaw is just Nazi mutant guy. And he is, Magneto, if he was... And we don't have this version of Xavier yet. So we have these mirrors for Magneto and for Xavier. He is Magneto without a conscience. And he's like what people that have never read a comic book might think Magneto is.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's cool.
And like sees himself as even superior to the rest of the mutants. Sees himself on top like that. I don't know what your version of Xavier would be until you do Onslaught.
Maybe that could have been our third movie in this First Class trilogy.
Yeah, sure. No, I would. Well, actually, that would be okay if it was in the 90s. If you're gonna do an Onslaught story, put it in the 90s.
That's where it's got to be.
Well, that's where Onslaught starts. Is all.
Oh, okay, yeah.
That's where the big, initial, very convoluted Onslaught story is. We got a $5 super chat from Victor Herman. What do you guys think this movie's legacy will be? Of all the comic book movies of the last 10 years, I almost never hear people talk about this one. That's interesting. Different echo chambers because I mean, maybe that's not fair, but I just mean like everybody's got their own communities, right? I don't have that. This still comes up a decent amount in my circles, but...
So I agree with what he's saying. I think it's definitely lessened in overall like how much people talk about it. I still think like when it comes up, people genuinely really like this movie. I think because of the two sequels and then Fox got sold off, it's diluted the pool a little bit.
That's a lot of it. Also, I think for some people, Logan probably eclipses it.
Well, then there's that too. Yeah.
And I think for some people, Deadpool probably eclipses it.
Possibly.
I don't mean in they're better movies. I mean they came later, and so those are the things they're thinking about now because they like those movies.
Sure. I'm just thinking that might be different enough that it might not come up in the same conversation, but possibly.
Jareth Gearhart says McAvoy said at MegaCon he wanted to do Onslaught. He would be so killer for Evil Xavier. I would love it to death. I would have been so excited for that.
Oh yeah, I'm sure he would.
He would be scary as all hell, right?
And then you get Fassbender to do good Magneto, right? Like that's what you do with that.
Oh, that'd be great! Absolutely, sure. You do what X-Men 97 is doing right now, and you have him take over the school, and he goes up against Onslaught. 97 is not doing Onslaught so far. I hope they do.
Have Xavier, yeah.
I hope they do. Although the original X-Men show has an evil Xavier for an episode that reminds me of Onslaught, but it's not Onslaught, which is weird because I think Onslaught is happening in the comics right then, and it could have been, I think.
Maybe just because animation takes so long, like maybe they'd written it before Onslaught.
Oh, that's
happened?
entirely possible. I don't know
Maybe?
because I don't remember the
exact dates.
The exact dates. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the timeline, and by the way, there are some things with some of these scenes that we could be talking about that I've just brought up ad nauseum. So I just have not done it for this commentary. Austin, feel free to bring up anything you want to, but the timeline has always been wonky with this, and I try not to overthink it. I try not to make too big of a deal out of it, but it is kind of weird. And I don't know. I don't know how to get around to this, of course. But there's a couple of things that are odd that are just kind of hard not to have to live with. One of them is for the time period we're in when this movie comes out, the future for this is only 9 years later. So it's the far-flung future of 2023. So the scary future happened last year, Austin.
Oh no.
And I don't know if you've ever done the math on that, but we're told specifically how many years after 1973 it is, so we know what that year is, even though nobody ever says it. Mm-hmm. And the other thing that's weird about it is, in going back and doing the soft reboot prequel thing with First Class, where at first we couldn't even tell how much of a prequel it's supposed to be, and then we know for sure that it's fully in the same universe when we get into this movie. Mm-hmm. You started with Singer's initial movies where it's the not too distant future, we don't have years and we're ambiguous about that, and then you give us specific dates. Mm-hmm. So now you gotta go, okay, I guess retroactively we know almost exactly the years the next 1, 2, and 3 have to happen in.
Yeah, they just retroactively become the years they came out in, I think.
But it's a little bit awkward because there's certain characters whose ages you have to fudge kind of funky.
In well, that's one of the funny things by the time you get to Dark Phoenix, where it's like, in like 5 years, Magneto is Ian McKellen.
Yeah, it's hilarious. And we don't do anything makeup-wise, really, to make anybody look older in those movies. No. I am working on a movie myself right now, the Superhero Rewind movie, and I'll say, by the way, that one of the big influences for it is this film, and I have been really overthinking like makeup and like making myself look older in the future and stuff, because I'm doing a future version of myself, and I am pretty well in the place now where I'm not even really gonna worry about makeup effects, because if they can get away with it, I feel like I can.
Yes, Cap and I have had many undocumented behind-the-scenes discussions about that. They would have made great featurettes.
Oh, that's true. I wish we'd done that. Okay, I have a question about this scene.
Go for it.
And it's not what you think it's going to be.
It's not the music thing?
It's not the music. It's not the obvious music thing. We've talked about that a lot. The rate the music is going would be obviously a lot slower. How is he listening to the song? I don't know. I don't think you can change the speed of a Walkman. I don't know how this works.
I mean, he was playing Pong super fast, so maybe it's the Superman thing of he just has like an aura around it.
How did he get the Pong machine in his house? He's super fast, not super strong.
He disassembled it and then reassembled it super fast.
I had that thought myself. Yeah. Okay, so no, here's my question about this.
Yes.
And maybe there's just a plot point I'm forgetting that I missed even on this viewing.
Mm-hmm.
The cops here have, bear with me, the cops here have plastic guns.
Yes.
But there's a bunch of metal in this room.
Yes.
Why does Magneto even need Quicksilver to do what he's doing?
I guess it's kind of too late, because he, like, by the time he's already shot everything up in the air, they've already shot.
He just doesn't even try. But at the moment he comes in this room, like as soon as they show up, I don't know why he doesn't start using his powers.
Well,
in any other situation he would. I don't understand that.
It's because he's expecting Charles to shut them down, and he gets that information that he can't too late. I think.
Maybe that's what it's supposed to be.
I
But in
also,
that case,
I
wouldn't
also
you
take
just
issue
start...
with why Magneto's prison is in the Pentagon.
So there's a throwaway line that's supposed to explain it,
Uh-huh.
which is, it's the most heavily guarded building in the world.
Yes, but it's also like a very important government building. Like,
Yeah, that if he does escape, he's in the freaking Pentagon. No, wait.
Yeah, no, he will rip this entire building apart.
It's a neat location. It looks cool. It's a good idea visually. And that's why they did it.
That's a way in which we're going back to X2, right? Because we break into the White House and that, and now we're breaking into the Pentagon.
Yeah, and there's so much of that with this, right?
But like that's stupid. It doesn't make any sense. Why would they lock him up in the Pentagon?
And then in the road cut, there's a really quick deleted scene in the... I say deleted. It's not in this movie. Mid-credits where they've put Trask in that hole.
Really?
Yes.
Why would they lock Trask in the Pentagon?
I don't know, because they thought it would be funny.
Specifically for one man. Let's throw Trask in it.
Yeah, they just put Trask down there.
That's bizarre.
Right?
I was hoping you were going to say Rogue is locked in the Pentagon in the future.
Oh, yeah. I don't know why she would be there either, but
It makes more sense than Trask.
wait, it makes more sense than what the Rogue cut does with Rogue, because she apparently has been strapped to a table for 10 years.
That's really funny.
Speaking to the Rogue cut for just a minute, I don't want to talk about it too much since Austin hasn't actually seen it, because maybe we will actually do a commentary on it down the road. I was going to deal more with it. I actually watched the commentary.
Well, you can throw that stuff out. Like I said, I do know a lot of changes.
But yeah, I'm thinking about more things specifically with just this cut that I want to talk about. But I do think that maybe I do actually prefer it at this point to the original or to the theatrical version, like mostly for small connective tissue bits that are put back in that just flesh things out a little bit and give it some breathing room. I don't like, and I've talked about this before, I don't like the Beast stuff at all with Mystique, and I'm really glad that stuff's not here anymore.
Sure.
Because in that cut, she goes back to the mansion and she messes up Cerebro. You know, like X1.
X1.
Yeah. And Beast sees her and doesn't immediately go to Xavier, and instead starts to like rekindle his romance with her, and they almost have sex on the floor.
Mm-hmm. And I knew that, and
I really don't like that.
Just kind of stopped to do that.
It massively throws him under the bus, and I think the glances they have in this cut are enough. I think just acknowledging their prior interest in each other is all you need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because I don't really like their romance that much in First Class, so like the fact that we kind of toned it down in this, I think, works. And then you just get little moments like that.
Also, we're doing this scene again. So X2 has this scene, and then First Class has the scene, and now we're doing it again.
Yes. No, they are the exact same scene.
And we also had a Mystique breaks into an office and looks at files scene, just like X2.
Mm-hmm. And then almost gets caught by one of the... I guess it's not like a villain, but like somebody else that works there.
Also, did you know that originally, and this has not changed for the Rogue cut, Ottman was never able to make it happen, the opening scene with like the slaughter of the future X-Men before Bishop gets sent back in time again, mm-hmm. That whole action sequence was supposed to be scored more like the opening scene in X2 with the White House, with the Requiem.
Oh, okay, interesting.
And I don't know what piece of music he was going for, but he had something like that, where he was trying to give it more gravitas, and like the studio didn't like it, and ultimately Singer didn't like it, and he was doing that because he couldn't figure out the music that ultimately, I don't know why he was having such a hard time with that scene, but the music we ultimately have in this version, which I actually quite like, he wasn't happy with, and at the 11th hour he had to go in and record it with like a 90-piece orchestra like days before the premiere.
Wow.
Apparently.
That's crazy. Yeah, I didn't know any of that. Wow. And the score on that scene, like, it's not bad. Like, it's fine.
Yeah, we talked about over the plane stuff that we just had. Makura says also I agree with everything Eric says about Charles here. They both have points, and I think that I can completely see where Eric is coming from. I think that the mistake Xavier makes is completely giving up, not of course going with Magneto and becoming a terrorist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like
well,
that's
the big thing with that scene is that Fassbender completely kills it.
He kills it, yeah.
That's one of his better scenes in this movie.
So when Magneto says you abandoned us all, yeah, he did. But
I like that he specifically names them. Like, it's not like, oh, you got all these people killed. It's like, no, you got this person, this person, this person. Like, these are all of the people that you let down.
You know what makes me laugh about that, though?
That he does the same thing Wolverine does?
He does the same thing Wolverine does later when he says, remember these names? That he cherry picks which ones he's going to give the human name for, and which one. And, like, I'm fine with Emma because, like White
really
Queen's not a thing in these, in First Class. But why does he say Banshee? If he says, well, I guess he would say, what is it? Which ones does he say? He says Emma, he says Banshee. Azazel. Okay, maybe.
I think, does he say Angel's name? I don't remember.
He does say Angel, yeah. Okay, maybe he's as consistent as he can be just because Emma doesn't have a moniker.
Mm-hmm.
It still reads funny to me, though.
Yeah, it is just funny because it's that same thing of, like, use a real name. It's what's the opposite, right? Where he used their made-up superhero names and then a real name.
Wolverine's just taking a nap back there.
Yeah, Hugh Jackman's just tired. He's like, I'm done.
I'm gonna cry foul there. I don't buy that Wolverine would be able to sleep on an airplane.
Yeah, they don't really mention that he's afraid of flying in this.
I feel like there's a couple shots where they're trying to go back to, look how uncomfortable he is in the plane, but they don't draw as much attention to it as usual. And one of the reasons to do this airplane scene is to go back to that because Singer thinks it's a really funny running gag for some reason.
Yeah, well,
it comes up all the time with his movies.
The big moment that I feel like you get that is when, like in that last scene we were just talking about, because the plane's like gonna crash.
Spear says what Magneto says is a total non sequitur. That has nothing to do with what Charles was saying. It's such a childish tit-for-tat moment from him. I'd have to go back and analyze like exactly the back and forth, but it didn't read like that to me. Like,
yeah, no, I didn't really have that.
I think they are connected enough. That yes, from it's just about whose perspective you look at, right? Like, from Charles's perspective, there is clearly a difference between the way Magneto abandoned him and the way he abandoned him. But from Eric's perspective, what Charles did was like just as bad or worse. And also, it's layered, right? Because he abandoned him in the sense that he wasn't there when those people died, but he also felt just as abandoned as Charles did because Charles didn't side with him in the first place. I do still have, and I'm a broken record on this, and I've eased up on it a little bit, Austin, but I do still have the issue I've always had with First Class, where Xavier gives Magneto a little bit too much credit when he first meets him about like how much he can change and just completely ignoring that he's been kind of a serial killer. So then this movie is really odd with that, where he's so concerned about Raven killing and that like she'll never be able to come back from it if she kills one person. And it's like, you brought Magneto into your house and completely ignored all the people he had murdered already and thought he would be able to come back from that, and were completely shocked and terrified by the end of that movie when it didn't work out the way you expected it to. Like, that seems a little inconsistent to me.
Yeah, fair enough. I guess now he's learned. He learned his lesson. But also not really, because he's going to let Magneto go off at the end.
Dagon Spirit, Charles was yelling about Eric taking Raven and abandoning him, so I guess in a way it does connect more than I thought.
Yeah, exactly.
This won't mean anything to you, Austin, but I'm always distracted by the device that can read mutants, because it's shaped exactly like the Doctor's mobile emitter in Star Trek Voyager. It looks exactly like it.
Like a baby monitor.
Yeah, it looks like that too. It's very 70s.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I like the look of it.
It's his PKG meter.
Discussing topics, the material here is actually on Fassbender's level, unlike the next two. That's absolutely right.
Mm-hmm. Unlike most of the stuff Fassbender's done in the last, 10 years.
Isn't that sad?
It is really sad. I like Fassbender a lot, but it seemed like after that Assassin's Creed movie, he started to be in just some not great things.
And we have a tendency, of course, to throw Simon Kinberg under the bus a lot, but you do have to give him credit here, because he wrote all the good stuff along with the bad stuff. This movie has one written by credit, and if you like that scene, you have to give Kinberg credit, because he probably wrote it.
Yep, that is true. Unless that was in Vaughn's notes. Probably not.
Okay, but even if it was, Vaughn didn't write any dialogue for this movie.
No, I know. I'm just joking. But because that's always just my excuse for it with Kinberg is he was building off somebody else's work.
But also
with
Vaughn,
script, so.
But let me say this too, Austin. You have to take the good with the bad with Vaughn as well, because it was Vaughn's idea to do the JFK thing, and if you don't like the curved bullet thing, that comes from Vaughn.
Mm-hmm. No, and I really don't like the JFK thing. It's very dumb.
Now, I don't know how he would have done it. All I read was that he pitched them, wouldn't it be interesting if Magneto had something to do with the curved bullet? Is it possible?
That's fine.
Is it possible that in a Vaughn version, Magneto is actually the real killer and it's not a misunderstanding?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and if that's the case, that's fine.
It has to curve to kill him. It makes no... Like, I like the idea on paper that Magneto... It's complicated, right? Personally, I like the idea that Magneto would try to save JFK because JFK is a mutant.
Mm-hmm.
But the details in real life of what actually happened don't make sense to go with that, because... And with Magneto's powers, because how would he miss? Like, you got a bullet...
It doesn't make any sense. It's so stupid.
So, like, the bullet was shooting toward him, but would not have hit him, but because Magneto tried to deflect it, it then hit... I don't understand.
Mm-hmm. No,
and they really don't want you to overthink it.
They thought of something that they went, oh, this sounds really cool. We should do it. And then nobody actually thought about what that meant or, how that would work.
That's kind of what it seems like.
They just did it. And I think we also talked about this in the history thing. I thought he was lying in the theater, because I was like, that doesn't make any sense. Surely he's lying.
Yeah, no, it's true.
But no, we did, because I was expecting it to come back, and then it doesn't. So, no. Magneto tried to save him by deflecting the bullet into him. It's really stupid.
How do you feel about Wolverine like losing his grip here just because he gets a glimpse of Stryker. Like, does that work?
Um, I think it's probably fine. Like that is like a major source of trauma.
Yeah. I think I'm okay with it, but
The main issue with it is just the Striker has no presence.
yeah, exactly.
Like, if I liked Striker more, like it would be a really cool moment, I guess. But as is, I think it's fine.
I had a thought that, like I hadn't thought about that until this viewing, where I was like, I'm not sure if that would like completely take him out the way it does. Like I know it's supposed to be difficult for him to hang on and keep the the like time.
Well, I guess it is just kind of
It's not a vortex, but to like keep the gateway open between the time periods. But I guess the problem with it for me is it hasn't really felt difficult for him, and he's.
Well, that's the thing, is that it's only really there as like the one moment where that happens. So it's like
it's too token.
Yeah, and it's a source of drama, but like there's so much happening in this scene already.
Yeah, and it's kind of a plot device originally, anyway, much more so with the Rogue cut, to create tension in the future.
Yes. And now you don't have that.
Because the idea is supposed to be that Kitty Pryde is not going to be able to hold on as well because she's like mortally wounded, and that's when they have to go get Rogue to help her.
Yes. And in this version, she just is able to hold on to it.
Yeah, she just holds on. It's fine. Now, I will complain that in both cuts, it would be nice if we cut back to the future a little bit more often than we do even before this moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I sort of want, like, I agree that the majority of the story should probably take place in 73. Like, that's where the
that's where everything's happening.
Yeah, that's where the major drama is. That's Xavier is really our protagonist here, and Wolverine is just facilitating that. That's one of the things this movie really gets right, is that Wolverine is a catalyst, but it's not his movie. Mm-hmm. And he facilitates things, and it's kind of a nice reversal, the idea that he would have to go back and help Xavier find himself. I love all of that. That works great. So it gets to I just thought of this. It does get to continue to be a sequel to the original movies, to the Singer movies, even when we're not in the future, along with Wolverine, because he is informed so much by his original relationship with Xavier in those movies. Mm-hmm. So that all works great. But because in the Rogue cut, we deal with which is whatever, but the love triangle again, kind of with Bobby and Rogue and Kitty Pryde. It makes me want to spend a little bit more time with some of the other characters from those movies, just to see where they are and where they've been. Like, maybe it doesn't even have to be interspersed with this stuff. Maybe if we just spend another 10 minutes in the past, like, establishing some stuff at the beginning.
Yeah, like before they actually go back even.
Yeah, because we just launched right into exposition. Mm-hmm. Did you know, by the way, that the opening with Xavier's standard monologue that's showing us how bad off the future is, which in some ways is worse than it even was in the comics or the 90s show. They almost didn't even shoot that.
I didn't know that.
Can you imagine this movie without the bodies coming off the truck and all? They almost didn't even include that.
Well, and one of the things I have even with the movie already is I don't really get a good idea of what the world looks like in the future. And if you cut that completely, like that opening, it's way worse.
That's another example of, well, we've got the one obligatory beat, so we don't need to show you anything else. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Singer really likes the White House.
He does, yeah. At least so much so that he put the climax here.
See, it's just natural conclusion if you're going to make a sequel to X2.
Oh, okay.
Now we got to set the climax of the white. See, it's like poetry. It rhymes because
they should have set the entire climax in this room.
Well, then that would just be a double beat. See, because
lightning flashes and then the villains are here, and then lightning flashes again, and the heroes are here, and then lightning flashes, and then they fight.
What characters from the original franchise are you really missing here, if anyone?
I do wish we had Beast in the future. Like, obviously we get him at the end, but I wish he had more of a presence because he's also part of the past. And it would have been nice to have Kelsey Grammer do something.
Yeah, it would have been cool if that was a character that was still around.
Yeah, and he got to do something. I mean, I like that bit where Beast is like, "Do I make it?" and Wolverine's like, "No," but we can change that.
Yeah, no, that's great.
You would lose that, but like,
and that's different in the Rogue cut. That happens earlier, and it's not as good of a scene. I actually prefer what they do in this cut better.
Oh, okay, cool. As opposed to that, I mean, I guess it is weird that Rogue isn't in this movie just because her and Wolverine are such a big part of at least the first two.
Well, and for my money, she got shafted so hard in X3 that I think it's just not fair to Paquin that she then gets completely eliminated from this movie. But the consolation prize for Paquin is she got her character's name on a whole cut.
You know what the true answer is, though, Cap?
Is it Nightcrawler?
No, it's Cyclops, and you just never explain why he's there.
Look, if we don't have to explain it with Xavier, why do we have to explain it for anybody? Like,
and he would die instantly.
And I hear people say, "Oh, right, we got to get rid of him because he would clearly optic blast would solve that entire problem."
He would get one line where Wolverine's going to go to the past, and Cyclops is like, "When you're in the past, don't mess with my girl."
So I have heard we had this conversation the other day where you were talking about how you think Vaughn does a lot more cool, inventive things with powers in First Class, and I agree with that. Singer sometimes does it too. I think.
I think that scene is really cool when Magneto's like stitching up his head.
That's what I was going to say. That seems like the kind of thing Vaughn might have done with him, and I like how almost overthought the whole thing is. Where like he's got to have a mirror and he's got like a makeshift projector, and it's kind of great.
That's really cool.
I do question, and this is minor and who cares, but I do kind of question how much of your concentration it would take to do that. Like, could you even pay attention to the news when you're sewing up your own head?
I wondered that too, yeah, because I feel like you got to use your concentration to move things. But I don't know. Like, apparently not. Well, and that is like a very blink and you miss it. Like if you miss what he was looking at in that scene, you're not going to understand why he can like reprogram the Sentinels in the worst looking scene in this movie.
It's embarrassing.
It's really bad.
Hey, let's address this. Dagan Spear says, I think Days of Future Past has a couple instances of not making sense. I think it has more than a couple. Like Charles' serum, I think it would have worked more if it established Charles' powers were exacerbating the injury somehow. How do you feel about that whole thing? Because I've always liked it thematically, and I never wanted to overthink it, but there is that question of why one really correlates to the other.
Oh, I don't think it makes any sense and is entirely there for theme, but I don't need it to be like that strong and like, look, get it? Like he has to give up like being able to walk and stuff. Like I think it's too in your face. I've never liked that. I think that's terrible.
Okay, I'm more okay with it than you are, but it is too.
It doesn't make any sense.
It is too on the nose. What I like about
shot in the spine.
what I like about the serum, yeah, okay, fair enough. What I do like about the serum is I like that it's not actually a drug addiction.
Well, he is also doing drugs too.
I thought it was just the serum. Is he doing actual drugs?
Yeah, you see, like, I think he's smoking pot and stuff in that first scene when he's injecting himself.
okay, but he's not necessarily like ultra addicted to anything. He's not doing heroin or anything.
No, that
Like
is
maybe he's doing drugs, but I guess what I mean is one of the things I was nervous about when this movie was announced and when we got shots of what he looked like is I thought he was going to have to go into detox or something.
Oh, okay.
And I think it's maybe throwing Xavier a little bit too under the bus if we go far enough to say that he had like a huge drug problem. I like that it's
just allegorical.
I like that it's allegorical. I like that he's taking that medicine because his dreams are haunted by the by the mistakes he's made, and he can't stand to get into anyone's head because he's afraid that he'll make everything worse. I like all of that. I really thought it was going to be an actual drug addiction.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I need them to like not have he's not handicapped anymore when he loses his powers thing with it, and it feels like just an excuse to not have him in a wheelchair the entire movie. To me, anyways.
Yeah, no, that's fair. It's a little too cute. McAvoy also sells it so hard.
I mean, McAvoy's great.
That I think that's why I was more okay with it initially.
Sure. No, and I think there's places where there's some wonky writing and maybe even directing that I think the actors are building up.
AMC anatomically couldn't spinal injuries have to do with the brain. Yeah, but there's the correlation. I mean, obviously it does. It's a spinal injury.
Not if his spine was literally shattered by a bullet, though, I wouldn't think.
Yeah, a serum is not going to mend that. Like a serum that's... We're not supposed to think about it. It's supposed to just be a positive side effect, right? Mm-hmm. It's... The serum is there so that Xavier doesn't have to use his powers. Mm-hmm. And...
Well, like I said, I think it's too in your face, and that it's like...
And the trade-off
is
his
the powers that he doesn't want, and he gets to walk. So it's like another thing that he has to give up. And
Well, what's on the nose about it is it makes him completely normal.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So here's maybe the most important scene in the movie in some ways that we were talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. If you don't have the scene with Trask, this character does not work at all. I'm sorry, Austin, what were you saying?
No, I said this is the big one we've been talking about, yeah.
Makura, I like the spine thing. It works thematically, and the line where Charles corrects Eric by saying he's sacrificing his powers so he can sleep is the best line in delivery in the movie. That's the moment I was thinking of when I said he sells it so hard. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a lot of why I was okay with this in the theater. And I still like it more than Austin does, but it...
No, and I really like that line. And I think that line plays even if he still can't walk. Like, it's... that is so much more impactful in that he's not in people's heads and he doesn't have to deal with, the sorrow that he's felt in terms of losing everybody.
You know, it'd be really interesting.
What's that?
And I'm rewriting the movie when I say this, so I mean, you wouldn't have this. I don't need this. Mm-hmm. It would, and this would put a whole other wrinkle in the story. But if you had Trask. Because keep in mind, it's like an alternate history thing. Yeah. So I think it's okay if Trask, especially if he's influenced at all by there being mutants, is creating some technologies that are like technically too advanced for the 70s. What if he made a technology that allowed Xavier to walk?
Well, and he does do the prosthetic thing. You could have done that.
And so Xavier is walking, but he's having to use the technology from a man who wants to get rid of all the mutants.
What if it then corrupts him and he is Master Mold?
I like incrementally getting us closer to what the X-Mansion will look like later, and having the kind of bad sounding computer voice. That's pretty great.
Yeah. We do just have straight up Cerebro now.
But it's all analog.
Mm-hmm. as it should be.
He can switch the dials and press the buttons.
But it's up here.
And Magneto helped him build it, I guess.
Don't think about it.
Well, they tried to cover their bases in First Class by having him in the room when it's introduced.
Yeah. It happened in the second movie we didn't get, Cap. He came back and he was like, "Friend, I will build this for you."
Yeah, he's like, I'm building this army of evil mutants, and we're going to be adversaries. But I do think it's really important that you can find mutants for your school.
Well, he needed Emma to use it so we could find more terrorists, so he broke in and built it.
Now, a thing, and I don't know if you'll agree with this, a thing that is not too on the nose for me that I appreciate a lot is the direct correlation between Xavier's self-confidence and his ability to use Cerebro. I think that's fantastic, and I think Cerebro, and I guess retroactively you can say this was always the case, but I hadn't had this thought until this last viewing that I had in preparation for this, but I'm seeing Cerebro more and more now as a representation of Xavier's connection to humanity, like the fact that Xavier's ideology is his belief is I can bring humans and mutants together in harmony. We can coexist, and when he's in Cerebro, he is connected to everyone.
Mm-hmm. No, it feels like the Spider-Man 2 thing, but maybe done a little bit better. Well, because I've never really liked the whole he loses his spider powers because he's not confident.
No, I never liked that either. But see, this works because
this works, yeah.
This works because he still has his power. He just can't use it effectively. And the idea that his power comes from his heart maybe sounds sappy, like if you say it out loud.
It
but
comes from my heart, boy.
There's a... I kind of buy it. There's almost like a psychosomatic thing I can see with that.
Well, and it's a much harder use of your powers. Like, it's not the same as reading one mind. Like, he's literally reading everyone's minds.
Yeah, and like
simultaneously, and that takes a certain level of skill to tune everything out, and I think that works.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that prior to this, even when he doesn't have his mojo, before he talks to future Xavier, he can go into other people's minds no problem, one-to-one.
We just needed a scene where he goes, "I lost my mojo."
Matthew Bass says, I don't like that Beast can go back and forth between human and beast form. That feels more forced to me as an excuse to not have the actor in makeup the whole time.
Yep.
Yeah, I agree with that.
We're also seeing that with Jennifer Lawrence, and it's not as bad as it will be with her, but we're already doing it as well. Yep. I agree. Well, because it makes him more of like the Hulk in this, in terms of how his powers work, which I already don't like. But then I agree in that it also takes away from his mistakes and lesson in First Class.
But at least the makeup isn't awkward like it was in First Class.
No, he looks terrible in First Class, and he looks way better in this one.
AMC, I always took it like something similar happened in the original timeline. I'm glad you said that, because one of the things that's always bugged me with this movie, and from first viewing, I complained about this the first time we talked about it, is I just want to know, and it's weird that future Xavier never talks about it.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to know how he got his confidence back and started the school back up in the first time around.
Yeah.
Because, like, clearly that had to have happened.
A week apocalypse attack, and then he went, well, I guess I better stop taking the serum.
It watches to me like at some point like Kinberg and Singer lost track of the fact that they're paving over a timeline, and it didn't even occur to them that this is a problem that would have been resolved at some point.
Mhm.
Like, I think they've forgotten that somewhere. Because, yes,
Yeah,
it's urgent
definitely.
right now. Like, he's going to have to find himself again in order for the future to be saved. Like, it's, I guess in order to, get, Raven back, make sure she doesn't kill Trask, all of that.
Hmm. He just has to get this mojo back earlier.
And I guess in the so in the first timeline, Trask is killed, and then the government gets their hands on Mystique, and eventually, but like a lot of years later, they're able to make the Sentinels that will ultimately ruin the world. And then in this version of the timeline, the idea is uh, because they changed the timeline, it would have happened much faster.
Hmm. I
Is
guess,
is that
yeah.
the idea? Like if Trask can get his hands on her? There's a
Mhm.
couple places where it feels like we're trying to create this sense of urgency that isn't quite clear enough to me.
What is weird, yeah, that Trask gets his hand on her in the 70s, but isn't able to do this until way later because she also has to break out, I guess, and
Well, it's
run
because
wild
he
with Magneto in
dies,
the
so I guess it
2000s.
takes the other scientists just a
Oh,
lot.
sorry, that's what I mean.
Isn't that
Yeah,
the idea? Is it just takes
yeah,
them a lot longer?
yeah. I guess so. Here's that awful looking scene.
Because there's a place. I just feel like it gets too buried. This is another one of those places where we need to talk about it more. There's a place where Trask is like, oh, I've got to get my hands on her. He's got that kind of icky line with Nixon where he's like, and I want her for
Scientific
scientific
purposes,
reasons.
of
In the
course.
Rogue cut, they make it worse
Mhm.
because immediately after that, Nixon has a line where he says, I don't care who you screw as long as it isn't me.
Oh boy, Nixon.
Yeah, they cut that, but that's left in the Rogue cut.
Oh, I have always wanted someone that could turn into anyone. Oh.
What makes it worse is that he recorded himself saying that.
That was the Watergate of this universe. I'm talking about Mystique.
This is obligatory, but I guess we should mention the Sentinels and how odd reverse engineering her power is, because it's not really what her powers do.
No, their powers are Darwin's powers.
And I've always thought so when the Rogue Cut came out, I was like, oh, okay, I think I know what they're doing. The
Mhm.
Rogue Cut is going to change it where instead of the Sentinels being based on Magneto's power, or Mystique's powers, they're based on Rogue's powers. Because that makes a little more sense.
Mhm. Yeah, I always thought they should have built the plot with them with that. If that's the route they had to go with, Darwin died in like a CIA facility. Like they would have his DNA. Like I know he explodes, but like they would have his DNA. I would think.
Yeah, I mean, it's maybe a little bit more of a stretch than this, because in this, the idea is Trask needs her whole body to be able to do to make them do what they do later. Like it's not enough just to have the DNA. Um,
Well, and that of course is they only went with that because they were like, we got to give her a bigger role. So how do we make Mystique important to the Sentinels? Well, what if they can like adapt to things, but like her
oh,
powers
you think they're
isn't.
working their way backwards just to make her part
Yes,
larger?
that's how I've always felt with this. Yeah, that's one of the main reasons I don't like Mystique in this movie is that I feel like that's how they built this. Like I don't think
Okay,
any of this is natural.
can I counter
Yes.
by saying, but I buy it as the reason that she seems so hardened and unfeeling and monosyllabic later on.
In what way? You mean like just that she went down this darker path?
Yeah, know that she was tortured for years by the government.
Oh, okay. I mean, yeah. But like
That's the part of it that makes it feel less like an excuse to give her more to do. Is it feels like they're trying to. It feels like Singer taking the idea from First Class and going, well, that's kind of odd that we had her as sort of an X-Man in the first place and like raised by Xavier. How do we even get her to the Mystique she'll be later? Well, the first thing you do is you say she was tortured forever, and then this for a long time, and then the second thing you do is you say she goes to revenge very quickly when her friends die.
Mm-hmm. I just don't know if they would have built an entire movie around why is this character monosyllabic in the originals and not here. You know what I mean?
No, I agree, but I blame it more on First Class because First Class made her too important in the first place.
No, and I agree with that. But
so that's why I'm not sure I buy your idea that it's they're working their way backwards just to give a big actress more to do. Mm-hmm. She was already the third wheel in the first movie.
But she's like the entire basis for the plot of this movie. And it's incredibly contrived to begin with. Like it's fitting a circle into a square slot.
Okay, and I agree with that to a degree, but I don't think it's because you have a big actress. I think it's because she was important in First Class. Mm-hmm. I think it's they're trying to make this as much of a sequel to First Class as they can.
Mm-hmm. But I also think she's way more important to this movie than she was in First Class. Like her role's way amped up.
Okay, see this. This exchange kind of confuses things a little bit with Trask needing her whole body later because because Beast was just said, well, they've got her DNA. That's all they need to make the Sentinels in the future, but it isn't.
Well, that you can just knock down to they don't know that. Like Trask says that to Stryker, but Beast and Professor X wouldn't necessarily know that. Like,
you might be right. That still reads like exposition to me, but
yeah,
to some
degree. That just
means
in terms of contradicting. Like, it is two different characters that don't know what the other two know.
You're right, but I get really skeptical when I listen to commentaries that show me just how piecemeal together this movie is.
No, and
because that is because what you got to realize is that's an added scene.
Okay,
that comes way late. That wasn't in the original script, which means a lot of what is there is to give the audience information they don't think we have.
Mm-hmm. But I think in that case, even if that is what they're thinking, even if the intention's wrong, like I think the read's still there. That even if it's not what was intended.
Yeah, and that's fair. It's a happy accident if you're right.
Yeah.
I like Fassbender Magneto going around with the balls. I like
that he's
X2 Magneto.
Like,
that's great. Do you like his hat?
I do like his hat.
He's got a great hat.
A Magneto costume, but
now this is the big.
Is this also in the pen? Oh yeah, we had an establishing shot. Sorry, I'm being stupid.
You're right. This is the big sad missing thing from the Rogue Cut.
Oh, okay.
So like it's a big shame to me that we don't get this in the theatrical version, even though you need the whole Rogue subplot to get it. In the Rogue Cut, Xavier goes back to the X-Mansion where Rogue is being experimented on by the Sentinels. And we get this great intercut sequence of Magneto and Xavier going down the hall in the X-Mansion trying to break in, while Magneto in the past is going to get his helmet.
Yeah.
And the intercutting back and forth is just really cool. I really like the editing with that. You also get to see more props from that scene, more close up. So You can't really see it in this cut, even though it's there, but the coin that he used to kill Shaw is there, and they zoom in on it, and they show it to you in the Rogue cut.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The other reason I really like that, and it's just really sad to see future Xavier watch his house blow up. That whole thing is great. And I think it's just kind of poetic and nice to see, like, the destruction of his house while we're seeing still kind of the origin of the X-Mansion. And then when you get to the end, we start intercutting in this cut the we talked right over the 2 Xavier scene, but I don't know what to say about that I haven't before.
Yeah, I'm glad
it's beautifully well acted.
Scene.
It's
like,
beautifully
you could have
acted.
gotten way too cutesy with that, but I'm glad that they got a moment.
I like how minimal it is.
Yeah,
and I'm
glad that we did contrive a way to make everybody meet their older version.
Yeah, that's the thing is, I would have liked to have seen more future and younger versions of characters, but I don't need them to come on screen together necessarily.
Yeah, exactly.
I want more paralleling stuff, and that's what I was going to say is in the in both versions, when you get to, and we're not that far away from it now, the Sentinels finally showing up in the future and killing everybody, we're intercutting between the action here and the action there, and that whole thing works really well, by the way, because we know, I like the way time travel works in this movie. We haven't really talked about that, but the idea that a rift is open and it won't close.
Both timelines are connected, which is why you have the, like, both are happening simultaneously, which is what a lot of time travel things do, but in not as smart of a way.
Well, what I was going to say is a lot of time travel movies will just cutely show you things happening at the same time, except the future would have already changed, so it doesn't make sense that you're seeing them both happen. But here, it's a rift that's open that doesn't close until Kitty closes it, and then the effects of on the timeline would take hold later.
You get stuff like Looper, where like a
that
character will lose like a limb in the past, and then suddenly they'll lose it like in a chase in the future, and like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But the reason I bring this up is to say I like doing some intercutting between the 2 time periods before we do it here, and I wish we could have left the Rogue stuff in so that we would have that already.
Yeah, have a little bit more.
It's nice that as an idea is already established.
Yeah, for sure.
Plus EDX, it's a fairly simple version of time travel, and that's what I like about it, is it doesn't break your brain. There's not really a paradox here.
It's not overly complicated.
No, the setup is contrived and kind of bad. But if you can accept the conceit by just going, okay, fine, I guess Kitty Pryde has a stupid secondary power, and I guess Wolverine can handle this because something healing factor, then, like, okay.
But this is the scene where I think the movie starts to fall apart in the 3rd act. Is Magneto ripping up this baseball diamond.
Well, and it's kind of a double beat with X2, right? That, like, now Magneto is your main threat again.
But my main thing is that I think it doesn't make any sense that this leads to a better future. We went from Mystique shot Trask in a meeting, and that's what caused the Days of Future Past feature. And they stopped that, but Magneto dropped a baseball diamond on the White House. That's so much worse. And we throw Trask away like really... it's very throwaway. It's very like, I think you see like a newspaper where it's like, oh, we got arrested for something. But like, I think none of this makes any sense.
I think the problem is that it's a little bit too superficial, where the real reason the terrible future happens is because because Mystique gets captured and they can make the Sentinels.
Just because they can make
that's the real reason.
The adaptive versions, but like,
yes. We treat it like it's all about how it changes mutant-human relations, but it isn't really about that. That's the problem with it.
Yeah, because they would be so much worse after this.
I'm telling you, I think the people making the movie lost sight of that.
Because, well, especially, like, Magneto is locked up for killing the president already. Like, you already have a mutant killed the president, and now a mutant dropped something on the White House.
Okay, so I'm gonna fight you on that and say that's a mulligan, because you still have the JFK conspiracy.
No, I'm just saying, like, it adds on top of it. Like, in terms of the government
it doesn't, though, because that's a secret. Nobody knows about that.
But the government does, is what I'm saying.
I see what you're saying. And so the government's not going to trust mutants, and so the ball can get rolling faster. I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
I thought you meant public perception.
Regular people, like, yeah, sure. But this would ruin it for regular people.
Plushy DX says everyone ends up loving Mystique after this, and that's the real problem with it. So I never minded how this ends, really, but the way it's perceived after it is the problem for me. Like this idea that Mystique is heralded as a mutant hero, and that humans like mutants because they saw Mystique not kill a guy. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. You make a really good case, though, and I hadn't really thought about that, for the idea that mutants would be much more hated, feared, and mistrusted after watching what Magneto does here, regardless of how Mystique handles it.
Yeah.
They're also going to look at the most powerful mutants and go, well, okay, so this shape-shifting woman didn't shoot a guy. Also, or does anybody even see her power as what she can do?
But the thing is, what do people?
This guy that can control all metal almost killed people, like almost killed the president. That's much scarier.
Well, but Cab also, because I think they're recording it, like a man that can move metal dropped a baseball diamond on the White House, and then a blue woman stood for a minute and contemplated assassinating, maybe the president. I don't know exactly what they can see, but still, like, pointed a gun at them for a good minute before deciding not to shoot. And that's what stops the Days of Future Past ending. And I agree, the apocalypse thing makes it worse, and that she becomes like the ultimate hero after that. It's really dumb in this movie too, though. Like,
that's what I'm saying, though, is that it's just superficial. What really stops that ending is just that Mystique escapes. That's it. Or that's what stops that future. So
you maybe could have fixed it in a sequel, like if you continued it and things aren't maybe as good as they seemed.
Like they
but
forgot.
It's something you have to fix from this movie.
Yeah, they forgot that the catalyst, and of course it doesn't have to be just like the comics, but they treat it kind of like the initial catalyst is a mutant killed an important person on national TV, and so people are scared of mutants now, right? Like, that's supposed to be the idea.
When it wouldn't have even been on TV, it was just like a secret meeting.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
it's just about government perception, not public perception.
In terms of that, I would think, yeah, because nobody would have seen her kill Trask. That's just what makes the government go, oh, we should finance this.
Dagon Spear, to be fair, they did also see a mutant rescue the president. Did they?
In terms of she stops Magneto, but also that's one person too.
But also I'm just trying to imagine what people watching the news would think about that. The problem is that she holds a gun on a human being for as long as she does.
So no, I'm just saying that's what he's talking about, is that Magneto's going to kill them and then she stops him, but then she also then picks up the gun and holds it on them for a while.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that doesn't look like a hero. That looks like a terrorist that, for whatever her own personal motives are, turns against a fellow terrorist. That's how people would perceive that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and they would be looking at this as, we can create weapons and mutants can immediately turn them on us, like that. Like, this would be a 9/11 event in the X-Men universe, and it's just not.
Yeah.
and it's very weird.
But what I was going to say about like comics and other versions of this, like usually the terrible future is caused by something like Professor X is assassinated
Mhm.
or something like that. Like you take somebody out. I forget what it is in the actual comics because it's been a while. But
Sure, yeah.
you take out somebody that like helps humans and mutants to put their differences aside, and then you have this awful future, and this it's just the technicality of, well, we don't have the technology, or we don't have the DNA we need.
Hmm.
And so maybe it would stave it off. Maybe Austin, it would stop
probably
this
just look
terrible thing.
different.
But would it create the near, at least for mutants, utopia that it's looking like you're seeing at the end of the film? Because everybody makes it, everybody survives, everybody's fine.
No, I would think it would look like this feature, but just different. Like it wouldn't be the exact same adaptive Sentinel thing.
Well, it may not be a full-on dystopia like this, but I wouldn't think it would be as kumbaya as what it kind of looks like at the end of this. Like, I mean, to be fair, you still have the X-Mansion, you still have a school for mutants, and that kind of suggests, well, I don't know. I mean, that could exist in a world where everybody is fine with mutants. I feel like the assumption you're supposed to make is it's still not full-on black and white, and there's still some, bigotry and stuff, but, like, everybody makes it.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
I don't even know for sure if mutants are going out and...
The government would be hunting
if the
the
X-Men
mutants
are going on
down in the
missions,
street
like, I don't know.
the next day after this. Like even if you don't have the Sentinel thing, they would be. It would be the beginning of the end right there.
AMC, she disarmed Magneto. Xavier even says all she's done so far is save the lives of these men. Yes, I know, but that feels like the movie, like trying to get me to buy it with a line. Even first time out, I wasn't totally sure about that part.
Yeah, what's the movie summarizing itself?
Like, here's the thing. He's right in that she can walk away from it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to make her look like a hero in the eyes of anyone.
Yeah, to be fair to this movie, like,
yeah,
it's more so on the sequels in terms of that aspect.
Yeah, exactly. But you're saying is the real problem is you're not buying that the dystopia wouldn't still happen.
No, I think it 100% still happens the second Magneto drops a baseball diamond on the White House.
Well, to be fair,
that's
though,
so much worse.
But Austin, to be fair, you've got, and I don't know. I guess I'm going to be stupid, and part of my evidence for this is just the kind of like moral of the story of the future is not set idea, but you've changed the timeline and you've got decades for like the X-Men to now stop that from happening.
Yeah. I mean, that's true, but like, I don't know, this also isn't a thing that happened, back then, and that's way worse than anything that happened in those original movies.
So Magneto really loves throwing Wolverine long distances, and I think it's really funny that we brought that back from X3.
Well, I also just like that the script got to a point where it's like, okay, we don't really need Wolverine in this movie, and they literally ejected him.
Something I hadn't thought about before this week is it's kind of amusing, and I don't think this is on purpose because it's with totally different characters. Magneto earlier in the movie was actually in a similar situation where he was not drowning, but like head up underwater for a while, and he had to get himself out, and then later he drowns Wolverine like that. And there's a part of me that wishes that Wolverine was responsible for putting Magneto in the water in that scene, so that would watch like he's getting his comeuppance on Wolverine, but it was Beast that did it, not Wolverine.
That is pretty funny. It does make me question how Wolverine's powers work. Because I would think that Wolverine could drown. I don't know. Like,
Yeah,
to be
I
under the
would
water that long?
I would think so. Well, to be fair, I'm not sure just how long he's underwater before he snaps back.
It's
And
got to be a while because Mystique walks out of here and like gets him on a boat. Like the
yeah,
fact that it's Mystique that pulls him out means it's got to have been a long time.
well, the question is, would his powers, because they heal him, allow him to technically survive underwater longer, even though he would eventually drown? I don't really know. But to be fair to
and it's not like a giant issue. I'm just wondering.
But to be fair to the script, they thought about it a little bit, because when Xavier asks the last thing he remembers, he says drowning.
Mhm.
And so that suggests that, like, he thinks he's dying.
Mhm. Well, it is kind of funny that from his point of view, the ending of this movie is he's just sitting underwater for like a day, and then he wakes up and he's in a good future.
Matthew Bass is putting the hero thing entirely on this movie and not even on the sequels. He says the hero thing is connected to the good future. It doesn't make sense. So he thinks the movie is saying that the relative mutant utopia of the ending is because people are accepting her as a hero. I don't think
What I'm just saying
an
was that,
audience would get that without Apocalypse, but
and yeah, and I'm just saying I think a sequel could have gone either way with that. So that's why I put it more on Apocalypse. But I have major issues with the third act. I think this entire movie kind of falls apart in its third act, as we've been talking about. Like
there's a lot of Mountain Dew product placement in this movie.
there's a lot. I've noticed that too.
I've always
This movie
been
also loves brutally murdering people that aren't proper humans, so you can get away with it in PG-13.
That's true. I mean, Wolverine can stab people, but beyond that,
Yeah, like you can like rip Colossus in half and like rip off Iceman's head because they're silver people or ice people.
yeah, the Toad thing is so weird to me.
The fact that Toad works at like a grill and cooks for people makes me want to throw up. Like that version of Toad, that's gross. That makes me hate mutants more than this White House thing, honestly.
What happens to a restaurant when it's struck by lightning?
Okay, imagine like if you do something mean to Toad, like in this restaurant, and he spits that green goo. He spits it.
Oh God!
Jean Grey, like onto your burger. It's horrifying.
Hey, I got a light bulb joke for you. How many Sentinels does it take to murder a woman, stabbing her through the back? Like, why does Blink need to be stabbed by 4 different Sentinels simultaneously?
Because Bryan Singer is a pervert.
Is it? Oh, that's not where I thought that was going. I would not have brought that up if that's what I thought you were gonna say. Is it just because if she's just stabbed by one, she's got a better chance at disappearing?
No, I think they're just having a lot of fun with like the over-the-top violence in the future. So it's like everybody has like a really messed up death. So it's like we can't go too far with her because she's like a regular person. We can't do as much as we're doing with the other people. But like, you can get away with like a couple stabbings.
Okay, I have a question about Magneto's helmet.
Yes.
Is it the same helmet from the end of First Class?
It would have to be.
Or is it... I can't tell if it's supposed to look like old, or because it doesn't have the horns anymore.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah. No, I think
it looks more stony to me.
It's just that they've changed designs. Like I think that's kind of all it is.
Okay. It's not important. I'm just wondering.
No, I agree. I assume that's all it is. I think it's supposed to be the same helmet.
You know, just because you can move metal with your mind doesn't mean that you know how technology works. Have you had that thought?
Yes.
Where it's like Magneto knows exactly how all the Sentinels turn on and how to tell them and how to program them.
That's why he watched that presentation while sewing up his head. It gave him a complete rundown of their operations.
Discussing Topic says it's not the helmet from First Class because that comes back in Dark Phoenix.
Oh, weird.
I didn't even remember that.
I don't remember anything about Dark Phoenix.
Matthew
Except that
Bays
Mystique died and I cheered.
says, yeah, this should make human and mutant relations worse, if anything. No, of course. What we need is the X2 ending again, where Xavier brings everybody to Nixon in the Oval Office and is like, look, Magneto doesn't represent all of us.
And then Nixon will be like, I'm gonna kill all the mutants.
Your Nixon sounds a lot like your Ledger Joker, by the way.
Oh yeah, that one was more Ledger-y. No, this is the end.
You want to know how I got these subpoenas?
Yeah, I want to see the version of this though, where like right after this happens, Professor X walks up to them and he's like, "We mean no harm."
AMC, wonderful speech by Magneto. Yeah, and it's really well delivered, of course, because Fassbender kills it.
100%.
Magneto actually has a really cool speech in the second episode of X-Men '97 that reminded me of that a little bit, but like it's about some different things.
I've always thought this was a really striking image for some reason. Professor X when he goes like that when he's about to get shot.
Yeah.
I do wish in the future that Magneto got more to do. I've always been disappointed with how little they utilize.
And that's one of the other reasons that I think maybe I like the Rogue Cut better now.
Oh, does he get more to do there?
Well, he at least gets to go to the mansion with Xavier.
Oh, okay.
And he gets a little bit more dialogue.
Because I was so disappointed when the Sentinels show up and he immediately gets taken out of that scene. Especially, I think I would have been more okay with it if this hadn't come out like at the same time as the Hobbit movies, where they do like a lot of action with him, and I'm sure there's a lot of CGI and slapping his face on somebody else. But
so he actually survives longer in the Rogue Cut, because there's an alternate thing they do with that. Like we probably should do a commentary on that, just because like with Daredevil, it is a different movie.
I always thought it was just like a different movie in parts. Like it's just got more to it, but like overall the movie's the same.
I mean, yeah, the story's not as different as it is with the Daredevil the director's cut. That's true, but there are a couple of plot points that are different.
Yeah.
But Kitty Pryde actually saves Magneto initially from a Sentinel when the Sentinels first show up.
Oh, okay.
So she goes through a wall. So she is mortally wounded, but she's able to get enough energy up to go through a wall, save Magneto, bring him back, and then sit right back down where she was before and just, like, bleed out.
Oh, so it's not the blink thing that happens in this.
No, it's different.
Okay. Weird.
That's what I'm saying. There are some alternate shots like that.
Mm-hmm. Weird.
Another thing that the Rogue Cut does that Singer didn't feel like is necessary, I kind of prefer it. But in the Rogue Cut, they fend off some Sentinels in the plane while they're leaving the mansion. And one of the Sentinels' legs gets trapped in some part of the airplane, and Xavier doesn't realize it. And that's the reason the Sentinels are able to find them, because they trapped that leg.
Oh, okay. As opposed to this where
they just show up.
Can't sit down for any amount of time or else they'll show up.
Yeah, exactly. I like that a little better just because the timing of their showing up seems kind of too convenient to me. Like, I buy that they'll find them eventually, but
it's kind of too quick, you think?
It's a little quick. Yeah, AMC, that's exactly the line I was talking about with that speech in X-Men '97. But I don't want to spoil it for people, so I'm not going to read that. Matthew Bass, $5 super chat. Can we discuss how creepy Professor X's powers are and the morality of mind controlling people? I wish we addressed that more. I wish we addressed it more too, and that's where, Xavier is fascinating to me as a character that means well, but sometimes can be really morally ambiguous. Because how would you not be at least somewhat corrupted by that power?
I mean, in that sequence, Mystique was going to shoot Trask, and he was perfectly okay with freezing all the government officials, but not the shooter.
It is really nice. I gotta say this real quick. When Wolverine wakes up in the future, uh, last year for us, Austin.
I've never noticed Rogue has like the green coat. Like they kind of do a nod to her.
Oh, I didn't catch that either.
Yeah.
But I was just gonna say, it is nice of the universe to always play the same song when you wake up in a different time period, so that you know that you've time traveled.
He should have woken up naked again because Terminator.
What are the odds that the exact same song would be playing on the radio in '73 and now? It's insane. It's absolutely nuts. Also, apparently relations between humans and mutants are so good that we've like made huge technological strides, because like it's 2024 now and we don't have that holographic technology hovering over your radio.
So this is one of those moments that I can't see the same anymore, because I remember the first time I watched this with my mom when it came out on DVD, where she was like, "Oh my God, everyone's back," and then we cut and you see Jean's back, and my mom was like, "Jean," and every time I see this, that's all I can think of.
I enjoy this moment in the theater because there is that split second where you're like, okay, I mean, maybe it won't be her. Maybe they'll do a really bad MCU joke here.
And they gave Cyclops those horrible future glasses.
Can you believe that?
They look terrible. Even when he shows up to show that he's still alive, he's still being disrespected.
But yeah, that bit with Rogue and Bobby, like, it's nice that at least you have a glimpse of her even in this cut. But that plays a lot nicer with the Rogue cut, because Bobby tragically dies in the X Mansion.
Oh, okay, so he has a different death entirely.
He has a different death, yeah. That's what I'm saying. It's a bit of a different movie.
Mm-hmm. Well, you have both that as like a throwback to X2, and then you have the comic book thing with Kitty Pryde and Colossus.
Yeah, it's cool. I like Stewart a lot in this scene. This is the one scene where he actually gets to act a little bit. Discussing topics. That one bit got Anna Paquin 6th or 7th billing in this film. I wonder why that happened. If that's true, she got like 6th or 7th billing.
I wonder if it's because they filmed like so much with her. Well, because that stuff's figured out like early on, like when you get your contract to be in the movie.
Oh, maybe so.
So it's probably because of that.
Maybe so.
But it's it's same with like, I think Mark Hamill's billed really early in Force Awakens, and Gwyneth Paltrow's billed like 3rd in Homecoming.
AMC says he dated Kitty but died for Rogue. Yeah, what's awkward about that is that they're together because Rogue has been kidnapped by the Sentinels and been stuck on a table for 10 years.
I mean, if your girlfriend was stuck on a table, you would go and date somebody else too.
Well, I probably would.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to say, I probably would.
That makes him more likable than the Thing's wife, is what we're saying.
So this is...
The fiance.
This is maybe the only instance I can think of this. Maybe I have this with other things that I'm not thinking of, where there's a thing that I just absolutely love in the theater with an ending, and then I immediately hate it when a sequel comes out.
Yes. Oh, so, you're gonna do the eye flash thing, right?
It's awful now.
Before you say that, can I just say Trask got arrested for stealing military secrets? What? Could we maybe have like an inclination of that? Like, why is that a thing that happened?
Yeah, I'm a little bit confused about.
That's just, we need him to go away. So we just rotate.
Yeah, I mean,
like we got arrested for, I don't know.
Yeah, should we try to break this down a little bit? How would it be natural for the government to respond to Trask after all this happens?
Why would that be?
Would Nixon do you think go back to him and be like, okay, no, after that Magneto thing, we actually really need the Sentinel program to work better?
You'd be like, your plan, we gotta do it.
Let me ask you this: could he not have just died anyway? Because the real issue wasn't just his death. It was, I'm a broken record, but was Mystique getting captured. If he dies in some other way where nobody would blame a mutant, like, why does he have to live?
Well, and you also could have just left it open. Like, maybe he's going to keep trying to do this, and you can deal with it later. Like, why did we just kind of throw him out?
Well, but the problem is they show you a future where everything's fine at the end, so you have to assume it didn't work out.
No, I understand that, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he was locked away, or that he disappeared. Like, he could still exist.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And you could have played more into it, like, he's still trying, but we've actually repaired relations. I know that's not really what this movie did, but, like, you could have tried to lean into that more in a sequel.
Do you think this is a situation where we actually needed a little bit more aftermath than we got in 73?
You either need that, or there needs to be set up for, like, a reason for him to be thrown out earlier on. You need one of the two.
Yeah.
Because it's just very hand wavy. It's like, yeah, we're done with that.
Yeah. No, that's true. I hadn't really thought about that before.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, you can complain about the eye thing now. I just wanted to get that out because we were looking at it too.
Well, it was, and I know I have talked about this before, but it drives me crazy. I have to bring it up.
Yeah.
In the theater, I thought it was fascinating, and I was so excited about the future of this franchise because you see the 2023 future, pardon me, you see all the characters that have made it. So as cool as all the cameos are, instantly you're going, well, how are you going to have any tension after this, because we know everybody makes it. You've already seen the future. And I think Singer at some point responded to that and was like, well, that's just a thing we did for the fans. Like, we can do anything we want to now. And I'm like, nah, you don't get to have your cake and eat it too like that. Like, you can't just say that because Xavier says, the future isn't set, that future doesn't happen, because you would have to know what the future was before you changed it. Like, you showed us a timeline, so you have to either hold to that timeline or do another time travel movie. Like, you can't do anything else. That's all that works for that. So the reason I mentioned that is to say, as soon as you're saying maybe Weapon X happens differently, you've piqued my interest. Now I'm much more curious about the future before 2023, because I have no idea what happens in between, and that's interesting. The idea that Mystique gets her hands on Wolverine and maybe Weapon X never happens, like, what is that? What are you gonna do with that? Nothing, because the Eye Flash was just a fun, silly thing they did in post, and it wasn't in the script in the first place. They had no plans for it, and they have no sense of internal logic of why it happens. So,
well, like I said, it means that he's been in the river for a while.
But what's also complicated and lame about it, Austin, is without the Eye Flash, that last scene doesn't make any sense, at least thematically, because what you have is Xavier's dialogue over it saying the future isn't set, but without the Eye Flash, you're just showing us the regular future that's supposed to happen.
Well, I guess in terms
what is that
of that
scene?
Well, I guess in terms of that, it's the future that we thought was set was the bad future, but look, it's not set. We saved everybody. But
you're saying it while you're showing Stryker getting Wolverine, and then that's your last image for your movie. Like, that's a thing we know is going to happen. It's just it's a lame last image without the Eye Flash.
But it is a different way that he got him than how they describe it in X2. Granted, so is the Wolverine movie, but
yeah, but you'd assume it would work out more or less the same way, and then Apocalypse confirms that it does.
I don't know.
All of that is
another
baffling to me.
Another hammer to the nail.
So again, looking at it, in a vacuum, putting my brain back in 2014 and just imagining the possibilities of the future, it's a really cool kick-ass ending. I love it.
And then they didn't do anything with it.
Then the future, the actual real-life future of this franchise happened. And I don't like it anymore.
Things were different. Teenage Jean Grey became the Dark Phoenix.
And unfortunately, now the present is set, Austin. Those things happened already. I can't change anything about that.
Mm-hmm. Well, now their future is dead.
Real quick, I want to ask you this question, and then I'll read the super chat from Bag.
Yes.
This is neither here nor there, but this is just a thought I had watching this today. Just looking at the scene at the end in the school, could you do an X-Men franchise in the movies a little bit more like X-Men Evolution or something, where the emphasis was a lot more on the school itself, and you do almost like a Harry Potter thing with X-Men?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what
that could be
after
cool.
this struggled with was how much they wanted to do that and how much they wanted to stick with Professor X and Magneto.
I'd love to get a sense of the rules of the school and what the politics of the X school is and everything. Like it would be kind of fun to do like a Harry Potter, X-Men franchise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like maybe we could focus a little bit more on that instead of the students running away from school in Apocalypse.
Yeah, because we do that a lot in these movies. They either get kidnapped or they just leave.
Yeah, well, they got to go out to the mall with Jubilee and to see Return of the Jedi.
Right, because, the third movie is always... Back Studios, 499 Super Chat. This is the weirdest illusion I've ever found in a movie, but I'm pretty sure the song currently playing... Sorry, we should have read this just as it came up. Is an homage to Time by Hans Zimmer. I'm not sure what he's talking about.
I guess just whatever that song was playing in the score, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know what Time by... what score that's off of.
Yeah, apologies, I'm not sure.
The second I heard Time, I was thinking Pink Floyd. Especially because Quicksilver had a Pink Floyd shirt. But...
Oh, yeah, I forgot there's an after-credit scene. It sets up Apocalypse, which sucks.
Yeah.
There was every reason to be excited about this movie. Say what?
He's not even blue.
Look, pyramids. Look, Stargate.
Yeah. Are you sad that we didn't have a connection to Essex, though? Look, there's literally 4 horsemen. Get it?
I'm only sad in the sense that it's funnier if it goes back even farther.
Oh my god, now it wants me to watch Apocalypse. I got jump scared. The screen went down and it was a big apocalypse going like that.
Oh, really?
At me, yeah.
That's funny.
Get out of here.
Okay, as always, we're going to go ahead and do tweet-length reviews before we give our ratings. And Austin, would you pull up the ones for Discord for me?
Of course.
That helps me a lot because Discord doesn't read great on my desktop for some reason.
Yeah, I guess you'll read the ones on Patreon and I'll read the Discord ones.
Yeah, there's just 2 on Patreon, so I'll read those first while you're pulling that up.
Yeah, I have it up and I got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I knew there were at least 4. Carl Maxey says Days of Future Past is the best X-Men film to date. By the way, you can leave a tweet-length review by, not for this movie right now, but for future movies, patreon.com/geekvolution. The $5 tier or beyond gives you access to that. Carl Maxey, Days of Future Past is the best X-Men film to date. Fox should have ended the franchise here on a high note. Austin, you kind of said that. Great dialogue, cinematography, and I love the respect of the old and new cast. Just wish the road cut was the main cut. I'm starting to feel that way myself. And the Sentinels didn't look like true Sentinels, future or not. Agreed. Striker/Mystique ending is very confusing. 9.5 out of 10. He's using his own rating system.
He's got his own.
He's an independent. Chewbacca's Lover. I thought it was pretty good.
Oh,
that's his review.
Not even a rating.
Austin, would you give us the Patreon, or sorry, the Discord reviews?
So MattBat68, definitely one of the best entries in the Fox X-Men franchise. Sure, there are several holes in the plot you could point to, but overall it makes for a satisfying adaptation of Days of Future Past storyline. Rating superhero. Thomas Edgehill, one of if not the best X-Men films, and one of my top 25 time travel movies. Rogue Cut, I give a legendary, and theatrical, I give a superhero. Connor Nielsen, X-Men Days of Future Past he did a bullet point. The best X-Men film.
Can't read that.
One of the best, one of the 10 best superhero films. One of the 2010s best blockbusters, probably the best legacy sequel. Rating legend in like very bold, big bold letters. Subject, so John, he says not only one of the best X-Men movies, it's still one of the best superhero movies of its time. Rating legend. Doolittle, I am fond of Days of Future Past, just a really well done science fiction movie at the end of the day. I thought they got a good use out of the 70s setting. The alternative history is not as good as First Class, which is a letdown, sad face. Rating superhero.
Okay, thanks guys. Austin,
a lot of them on that one.
Yeah, people love this movie and have certainly opinions.
Yeah, I had a worse viewing talking about it with you than I did earlier today.
I have this massive disconnect with things like this that kind of speak to me, and of course, I didn't talk a lot about Xavier's arc this time because I've broken that down so much, but it still gets me, especially that performance. But regardless of how we might feel about the serum thing, and I'm starting to like it less as we're talking about it. Mm-hmm. I still like the trajectory of it. The best line in the movie for me is "The power is on." Yes, it is. I love that exchange. It's so good.
Sure, yeah.
I get very excited by that every time. But anyway, I just had this disconnect where I was able to sit here and kind of rail at this movie for 2 straight hours, and like I'll just go for it's still at least a superhero. Like for me, like regardless of that, I don't think I can go to Legend right now. As much as I like this movie, I just don't think it quite gets there. Which feels like blasphemy to me. Did I give Legend to X2?
Probably. I'd be real shocked if you didn't.
So I had a long period where I was back and forth, like, is X2 or Days of Future Past my favorite X-Men movie? And like definitively it's X2 now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean I would definitely put X2 over this.
I think I have to say superhero at this point.
I'm going to be the bad guy then. I'm going to give it just a hero.
Wow, really?
Mm. Yep.
Well, I want to say thanks to everybody that just unsubscribed. And
I mean, it is a good movie at the end of the day. It's got a ton of issues, and it all weighs the film down, I think, for me.
And I got to be honest with you, I don't think the Rogue Cut would bump it up a notch for you. But
no, I needed this movie to have a different third act.
Yeah, and it of course doesn't.
Yeah, no. For me, a lot of it's the third act. The entire movie for me falls apart by then, and it becomes really dumb.
You made a great case for why.
Oh, thank you.
No, I mean, I appreciated that explanation, and I agree with a lot of it. It doesn't. But again, for me, it doesn't ruin it until the next one.
Mm-hmm. Sure, yeah.
But the idea that because I never really thought about that. The idea that the dystopia, that you're not buying that the dystopia doesn't still happen. That's very credible. That's like
No, in a movie that's all about the relationship between mutants and humans, you can't end that way.
No, you can't make it too much about just the technical, like how it happens.
They needed either just a really small climax, or I mean that's what they needed, but or just something completely different.
Yeah, like how do you? I guess the question is, can you have Magneto be the bad guy at the end like he is in X2 and still like have human and mutant relations okay at the end? Like I guess it
Well,
just
I'm
has
fine
to
with
not be
Magneto
public,
becoming the
right?
bad guy. It just needs to not be a giant terrorist attack on the White House that's way bigger than the thing that set off the plot.
Yeah. But I mean, it's also what he would do if given the chance, so you have to set it up differently.
Hmm. Yeah, for sure.
Anyway, well, that does it for the commentary. We've given you our ratings. Now we're going to reveal the movie for next time, which is not at all what I thought it was going to be. Austin and I put up. Well, I say that I wasn't sure what would win, but I was surprised by the margin this won by. We did a poll on Patreon for our $5, or I'm sorry, our $10 not patrons, our Patreon producers. Once again, patreon.com/geekvolution. $10 tier, lots of cool perks there for our producers. Sorry, it gets late. I try to do the spiel at 12:01 in the morning. And we did a poll of 4 movies, and Austin and I each picked 2. And the one that ended up winning is one of the ones I selected, and it's the Powerpuff Girls movie, which won by 41%, which really surprised me.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly.
One of the movies you really wanted got only 1 vote, and it was you.
And it was me. Oh well, easy come, easy go.
We're thinking about making that a double feature because that movie is pretty short and putting another animated movie with it, but we didn't think about that until right before the show, so I'm not going to announce another movie yet, but we might tack something else onto it. By then.
That out.
We'll do that in 2 weeks, and Austin has never seen that. Now, Austin, I got to ask you, have you ever seen any episodes of the Powerpuff Girls?
Nope, this will be my first experience with Powerpuff Girls.
Okay. I would maybe suggest you watch an episode or 2 before you see the movie, just so you have a sense of what that show is. But I mean, you don't have to. It would be interesting to see how somebody that's never watched that show would like that movie. Like I could see doing that. But there's kind of a format with that show. Like it might be smart to look at an episode or 2, but I will leave that up to you.
Because I could see going either way, yeah.
Yeah.
Because it might be interesting if I just watch the movie because you're like a big expert and then I'm like a noob on it. Like it would be 2 different voices.
Yeah, that's true. And I mean, not and I don't mean you need to watch it in that there's all these, characters and plot points you need to have. Powerpuff Girls is very simple, but the movie is both very much that show and kind of a departure. Like it's not what people were expecting.
Yeah.
It's also an origin thing, so starting with it is kind of interesting.
Yeah, we'll see.
Anyway, well, we'll see what happens. So we're going to do that in 2 weeks. Everybody, thanks a lot for watching and listening. We sure appreciate you. I'm just going to check comments again real quick before we go. We will see you again in 2 weeks, and more stuff coming for you next week on Geekvolution. I'm sorry. Patreon.
Oh, yeah, you got to read the people.
I knew I was missing something. One of the perks that you get at the $10 tier for Patreon producers is we read your name out at the end of every Rewind episode, and I'm going to do that right now. Austin, I'm going to start at the bottom this time and work my way up.
Okay.
So thanks to all of our patrons, but especially Wendell Jones, Unknown Passenger, The Day Ghost. I had to stop while he was blowing his nose. Michael Austin Gulick, Matthew Brody, Kareem Roberts, Jonathan Campbell, John Sandoval, Jacob Schneider, Damon Bugay, Adam March, Thomas Edgehill, Super Billy, Stone Gasman, Michael Martin, Matt Bat 68, John Matthew McLean, Jajira, Joe Turner, Hot Soup, Dr. Hello, Chewbacca's Lover, Jesse Surtees, Jeff Niederhofer, and David Crabtree. Once again, appreciate you guys watching during the show or after the fact. And in the meantime, I was Captain Logan, and this is Austin, the Day Ghost.
Now you really left me waiting on that one.
Later, folks.
See ya.